Chapter 803. Shishi had unexpectedly gained a little deer as her little friend in America. This was a special surprise for the little girl. She didn't even pester her parents to find out what her 6th birthday present was. She felt that having Huahua was already the best birthday present. Therefore, besides bringing Little White out for a walk every morning, the little girl had an additional task of cleaning the deer pen for Huahua. Since she had chosen to keep the deer, Yang naturally wanted the little girl to bear the responsibility of taking care of the deer. He wanted her to understand how difficult it was to take care of a large pet. Feeding the deer was more complicated, so the adults took over. Although cleaning the deer pen was a little dirty and tiring, it was still within Shishi's capabilities. On the 3rd day after adopting the deer, it was Shishi's birthday. Early in the morning, Shishi, who had just washed up and hadn't eaten breakfast, took her little broom and set off with her father. Sweep, sweep Huahua's house so clean, sleep well, grow up quickly. The little girl walked and hummed to herself. It was as if she had made up the lyrics herself. She sang softly and rhythmically as if she was singing. She seemed to be in a good mood. When they reached the stables, Yang Yi opened the door and brought Shishi to the little cubicle for the deer. At first, Yang Yi thought that he would have to build a deer pen for the deer, but old Ford said that there was an empty stables in the stables. It was just nice that the deer could use it. Shishi's arrival attracted the attention of many hungry ponies. They snorted and came over. Little White, I still have to clean up for Huahua. I'll play with you later. When Shishi passed by Little White's pen, she purposely explained to Little White, as if Little White could understand. You have to wait until you finish your breakfast before you come back to play with it. Yang Yi corrected her. Shishi repeated her father's words to Little White. In the deer pen, Floey was trembling as it curled up on a pile of grass in the corner. Some of the tall horses around it were intentionally or unintentionally looking at it. Although they were already familiar with Floey's existence, it was not their horse after all, so they were still a little wary of Floey. Yang Yi went in, picked up the rope around Floey's neck, and pulled it out. Floey was quite docile, except for the first day when it missed its mother badly and cried out for the whole night. For the past 2 days, it had been well behaved, obediently accepting its fate. Huahua. Shishi stroked Huahua's head lovingly. Its fur had not hardened yet, and was soft to the touch, as smooth as silk. Yang Yi smiled and said, Go and clean up. Sweep all the dirty things together. It'll be easier to clean up later. Yesterday, Yang Yi had taught Shishi how to clean the deer pen, so Shishi was already familiar with it. It was just that the way she held the broom was still a little awkward. Shishi was in the deer pen, waving the broom with all her might, sweeping up some dirt and grass. Looking at her holding her breath and exerting all her strength, her little face was red, and she was even a little cute. Papa, look, Floey is pooping here. Shishi found a pile of black small stones, and hurriedly pointed them out to her father. Yesterday, her father had already told her where these things came from. Sweep them out too and clean them together, Yang Yi said. Shishi, however, was a little troubled. She sighed and said, Papa, isn't Floey too disobedient? Why do you say that? Yang Yi was still holding on to the deer and casually asked. Floey will poo in its own room, but Xiaobai won't. Xiaobai won't. Xiaobai's room is very clean, Shishi said. That's because Xiaobai's room will be cleaned by others. Yang Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry and said, Moreover, when Xiaobai went out to play, it already pooped outside, so you can't see it here. Shishi suddenly said on a whim, Papa, can we put a pair of pants on Floey? Like my brother, it can be wrapped in a diaper, so it won't poo in the room. It's very unhygienic. Yang Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. After explaining for a while, he let her continue to work instead of thinking of a way to make Floey not poo. This way, she wouldn't have to clean. Yang Yi didn't expect that on Shishi's birthday, he would receive a piece of good news. Guaziyi made an overseas call, and told him that the admission results of Huijia Primary School were out, and 5 families had passed the exam. How are the real results? Forget it, don't talk about others. Just tell me how Shishi and I did in the exam. If we didn't go through the back door, could we get in with real results? Yang Yi asked. He was very interested in the first written exam he had experienced. He even couldn't help but have a competitive mentality. Guazi said with a smile. Brother Yang, what I'm talking about is the real results. My aunt didn't even have to do anything, and she found out that you passed the exam. Isn't this a better result? They all passed. Yang Yi was a little emotional. However, this was normal. The parents of the 5 families had received good education. Needless to say, Yang Yi, Lans Haokai, and Nanyun. Although Yang Yi's education was lower, no one would question his education level. Chen Guoqiang was a sports player, but he was also an undergraduate student who graduated from a sports university. The 5 children were also smart, and they were not particularly naughty and difficult to discipline. How could they not pass a small exam? However, Yang Yi still needed Guazi's aunt to help with one thing, and that was the allocation of classes at the beginning of the school year. Lans Haokai hoped that Lan Xian and Shishi would be in the same class, but since they were both in the same class, Yang Yi also asked Guazi to arrange the other 3 children. When Guazi called Yang Yi, he was actually not in Jiangcheng. This summer vacation, Guazi also went to the Beijing film and television base. Ding Xiang helped him accept a role. Guazi was to play the first male supporting role in a romance movie. It was worth mentioning that Guazi's summer vacation was originally planned. According to the original plan, Du Yuanlei was to film the TV series, Yuzue, that Yang Yi authorized to her. Guazi had also been chosen for this drama. He was going to play the role of Mouse. However, since the filming of The Shawshank Redemption had started, Yang Yi fought for a rare opportunity for Du Yuanlei to learn and improve herself. He asked her to be Wu Yian's assistant, which meant that she had to do all the chores. Even so, not everyone could do chores for an international director. Therefore, the filming of Yuzue was postponed, and Du Yuanlei went to prison with a group of men. It was also good for Guazi to film in Beijing, and it was more convenient for Ding Xiang to take care of him and Yang Huan. Of course, not everything had to be handled by Ding Xiang. Mo Shaowan also arranged 2 assistants for Ding Xiang, 1 male and 1 female. They were enough to deal with all kinds of complicated situations. For example, now, Yang Huan's task today was to play the role of a tofu seller. This was also a special guest role, but it was rare for her to have 2 lines. She had just finished filming and returned to the side of the set to remove her makeup when several reporters suddenly rushed up to her. Chapter 804. Luckily, Yang Huan was still in the tent provided by the production team. She was chatting happily with Ding Xiang, who was helping her remove her makeup. All of a sudden, 3 reporters rushed in and began taking pictures of Yang Huan without distinguishing between right and wrong. The dazzling white light caught Yang Huan off guard. What are you guys doing? Ding Xiang was shocked. She stood in front of Yang Huan and blocked the camera. This is the changing room. Don't you know the rules? She scolded angrily. However, the reporters were thick-skinned and ignored Ding Xiang's anger. They put down their cameras and took out their recording pens. They fought to be the first to ask Yang Huan, what's your role in the production team of 3 Shots Case and Dragon in Jianghu? According to reliable sources, you've been playing an ordinary role in the capital film base. Is that true? Why are you still taking on such minor roles when you're already so popular? Previously, there was news that you were invited to be the female lead in a movie, but you rejected it. The director even said that you were acting like a big shot. Is that true? I heard that you can only take on minor roles because the company and your brother are suppressing you to prevent you from flying away. Is that true? A series of questions were thrown out. Yang Huan, who was already a little confused, was dumbfounded. Why did he have to play a minor role and drag Yang Yi into it? It has nothing to do with my brother. I just want to practice my acting skills. That's why I came to the capital during the summer break, to try out different roles. Yang Huan replied. What happened? I went to the toilet. The male assistant came late. He was anxious and ashamed. Huan, don't reply. Ding Xiang held Yang Huan down and said to the male assistant, Brother Lin, please guard the door. Dear reporters, please delete the photos from just now before we accept your interview. Why? We're reporters. We have the right to take photos. The reporters argued. Because you've violated Yang Huan's privacy. This is the changing room. Ding Xiang said in a deep voice. Of course, it was impossible for the reporters to cooperate obediently, but they couldn't escape either. The male assistant that Mo Xiaowan assigned to Ding Xiang was a retired Special Forces soldier from a certain army. As he had a certain friendship with Shen Xinyu, Shen Xinyu asked Yang Yi to help her settle down. Some reporters tried to force their way in, but they were all stopped by Assistant Lin, who was eager to make up for his mistakes. It was inevitable that some physical conflicts broke out in the middle, but without exception, those who tried to force their way in had their arms twisted by Assistant Lin and pressed onto the table next to them. They cried out in pain, "You're restricting personal freedom. You don't have this right. Let me tell you, you're in big trouble." Actually, it was Ding Xiang's first time encountering such an extreme situation. She was just pretending to be calm. In order to ensure that there wouldn't be any major problems, Ding Xiang called Mo Xiaowan, who was far away in America, to ask for advice. However, Mo Xiaowan was even more hot-tempered than Ding Xiang. "Confiscate their cameras and say that we bought them. Write a receipt and get someone to transfer the money to them on the spot. But won't there be any legal issues?" Ding Xiang covered her phone and asked in a low voice. "The company has a legal department. They will handle it if there's any problem. Don't worry. Furthermore, we're in the right here." "Who asked them to barge into the changing room?" Mo Xiaowan snorted. "At most, we'll go to court. It doesn't matter if we win or lose. We can't back down when it comes to our principles." Of course, Mo Xiaowan wasn't reckless. She paused briefly and said to Ding Xiang, "When this is over, report to Big Sister AI and get her to expose this matter in advance. We have to control the tempo of public opinion." Ding Xiang only wanted to protect Yang Huan. She didn't expect there to be so many things to consider. After hanging up the phone, she hesitated for a brief moment and said to Assistant Lin, who was guarding the entrance, "Big Brother Lin, please take their cameras and memory cards." "You can't do this. You're breaking the law." The reporters shouted angrily. Ding Xiang waved her hand at Yang Huan, who was about to speak. It would be more convenient for her agent to handle this matter. Mimicking Mo Xiaojuan's words, Ding Xiang smiled and said in a gentle tone, "It's not illegal. We just want to buy your camera because it's pretty. Don't worry, we'll definitely compensate you enough to buy the same camera." No matter who was right or wrong, Yang Huan would definitely be pushed into the center of the whirlpool of public opinion. Moreover, the reporters would most likely support their own people and support the victim, who was forced to buy the camera. Therefore, that night, the Huai brothers' official micro-broadcasting released an official statement to explain what had happened. Yang Huan acted in many ordinary roles in the Beijing film and television base in order to improve her acting skills. We're very grateful for the concern of the reporters, but we also hope that everyone can give her some privacy. We're responsible for the compensation, but we won't allow any of our artists to be harmed. Therefore, our company reserves the right to pursue legal liability from XXXX newspaper, XXXX website, and XXXX magazine for violating other people's privacy. We hope that in the future. The long Weibo post vividly displayed the tough attitude of the Huai brothers. Of course, Huai and Huai's micro-broadcast didn't get a lot of attention. After Fei Yi's studio, Yang Huan's, Yang Yi's, and even the other 5 members of the Extreme Challenges team reposted it, the official announcement entered the eyes of many people. What surprised the Huai brothers' public relations department was that the conflict between Yang Huan and the reporters didn't receive much attention. Even though some media outlets were cheering for the reporters, they still didn't receive any response from the public. Perhaps they were tired of seeing the conflict between the reporters and the artists. Instead, the netizens were discussing Yang Huan's role as an extra. They couldn't understand why Yang Huan wanted to play an extra like an ordinary person. Wouldn't it be better to play the main role if she was famous? Microbroadcasting Yang Huan's latest photo of tofu, she made her fans feel sorry for her. "Huan Huan, you're the first celebrity to play an extra. Which big director is shooting an action movie? Can you use our sister Huan? She's so good that she doesn't even need a stunt double." That's right. Sister Huan doesn't need any acting skills to shoot an action movie. She can just use her hands to fight. "Huan Huan, rumor has it that you're being oppressed by your brother. Is that true? Yang Huan didn't see the comments until she came back from work the next day. She was so touched by her fans' concern that she didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She even took a selfie with her phone to explain to her fans why she chose to play an extra instead of playing a role in a movie. My brother didn't mistreat me. He's very nice to me. He said, there's a saying that goes, if you don't accumulate steps, you won't be able to travel 1,000 miles. If you don't accumulate small streams, you won't be able to form a river or an ocean. Yang Huan, if you want to go far and succeed in acting, you have to keep working hard. You can't be complacent just because you have some achievements. Remember, you're still a newbie in acting. Isn't it normal for newbies to play ordinary roles? I also talked to many seniors. My master, Yuan Yan, agreed with me. I have to try out more roles and hone my acting skills. That way, I won't be criticized for my bad acting skills when I play important roles in the future. In the video, Yang Huan was still as carefree as usual. She said everything she wanted to say. However, her sincere attitude and optimistic spirit made her fans love her even more. The video also showed that Yang Huan was serious about her acting skills, which made her fans see her in a new light. Sister Huan, you have a good attitude. You're not arrogant or rash. I like it. All the best, Huan Huan. I believe that you can become a real celebrity and a good actress. That's the right attitude. You're not like those little fresh meats and big vases who swarm to film and play the leading roles. In the end, all of them have facial paralysis in the camera. It's so embarrassing. I don't think Yang Huan has a good attitude. She's very lucky to have Yang Yi and so many senior actors to guide her along the way. Her master, Yuan Yan, is a big shot. He's an acting teacher in the Capital Film Academy. He's much better than the Media University of Rivertown. She has to work hard even when she's met someone who can help her. Yang Huan won't be arrogant just because she's a little famous. I'm now her fan. Because of this incident, Yang Huan unexpectedly gained a lot of true fans. She was also praised by the public and the media. She was even compared to other shameless actors who played the leading roles with lousy acting skills. This was something she hadn't expected. However, this was just a small episode. Yang Huan continued to work hard. Chapter 805. Shishi's 6th birthday was arranged by her grandparents. Yang Yi didn't know that this birthday would be so lively. The cowboys on the farm and their friends were all called over. Everyone gathered outside to eat, sing, and dance to celebrate Shishi's birthday. It had to be said that although these people looked a little rough, and their behavior maintained the rough and bold characteristics of the cowboys, in private, they were multi-talented and had their own unique skills. For example, Old Ford was a professional cowboy. His deep voice was able to sing the old songs of the 60s in the US, making people intoxicated even though they were not drunk. For example, Greg, a naughty and playful black guy, could perform an amazing street dance and win the applause of the audience. And Beria, although he was a hunter in the forest, he could also play the guitar and sing romantic Spanish songs. However, it was a little strange that Shishi's birthday was just a small start, and then it became a carnival for everyone. Everyone drank beer and sang songs, and it was very lively. They didn't even notice that late at night, the protagonist had been brought home by her parents. After washing up, she was ready to go to bed. There was a lively singing outside the window, and it seemed that it was no longer a solo, but a group of people singing and dancing around the bonfire. Papa, Greg and the others are still playing? Shishi, who was wearing a nightgown, leaned on the windowsill and looked outside. She said in surprise, "Don't they want to sleep? I'm going to sleep. Tomorrow, your grandpa will give them a day off. It's rare that they can have fun, so they have to have fun." Yang Yi smiled and said, "It's like when you invited other children to play at home. Papa would let you have fun with them instead of disturbing your fun." Shishi didn't want to go back to sleep. She was still listening to the noise outside with great interest. Yang Yi shook his head helplessly and walked over. Without warning, he reached out and put the screaming Shishi under his arm and closed the window. It seemed that the noise outside had become much quieter. Shishi knew that her father was playing with her. She struggled in her father's arms with her clean little feet and giggled again. Yang Yi put the little girl on the bed and pinched her little nose. He smiled and said, "Well, You should go to bed early. Tomorrow we're going to Fort Worth. That's where your mother used to go to primary school. The place where Mom went to primary school? Papa, what does it look like? Will it be the same as the Huejia primary school we went to last time? She asked excitedly. Papa doesn't know, so Mama will take us there tomorrow. We'll take it as an exploration trip, looking for traces of her footprints. What do you think? Yes. I like to explore, the little girl said happily. While Yang Yi was coaxing Shishi, who had been very excited all night, to sleep, Murphy, who was taking care of Tong Tong next door, made a big discovery. A few minutes ago, Tong Tong's schedule was different from Shishi's. He needed more sleep, so when he was tired from playing in the afternoon, he would sleep for a few hours. Now when it was Shishi's turn to sleep, Tong Tong was still playing happily. The little guy could crawl, sit, and even stand for a while with the help of adults. He was in the growth stage of being very active. As a matter of fact, he threw a plastic forklift out, and was about to crawl over to pick it up. This was a game he liked to play very much. But this time the poor plastic forklift rolled under the bed. The little guy lost sight of the plastic forklift and looked around in confusion. He was in a daze for a while. What's going on? Why did it disappear? At this time, Tong Tong was quite smart. Since he couldn't solve the problem by himself, he turned his head and looked at his mother. He was still babbling and pointing at the plastic forklift with his little finger, asking his mother to pick it up for him. Murphy sat beside him and teased him with a smile. Call Mom, call Mom. If you call Mom, Mom will help you pick it up. Shishi called Mom earlier than Tong Tong. When Shishi was 6 months old, she could say the word Mom with one syllable. Although she couldn't speak yet, Shishi did have some talent in languages. Tong Tong was slower than his sister. The little guy looked strong, so he picked up other things quickly. However, he still hadn't learned how to say Mom, which made Murphy a little anxious. Therefore, she had to coax Tong Tong countless times every day, hoping that he would learn how to say Mom. Of course, Murphy had many competitors, such as Yang Yi. He would also seize the opportunity to guide Tong Tong to call him Dad. Mo Henian and Zhou Mingyu, who were unwilling to be outdone, also hoped that Tong Tong would call them Dad first. Even Shishi would occasionally join in. Murphy didn't have it easy. Come on, call me Mama. Mo Fei pointed at herself with a smile and kept coaxing. Tong Tong looked at his mother in confusion, not knowing what she was doing. Tong Tong turned his head and looked under the bed. He pointed there again, and turned his head to call out to his mother anxiously. His big round eyes seemed to be saying, It's there. Mom, don't you know what I mean? It's there. Call Mom. Murphy made a final effort. She gently pulled Tong Tong's little hand and coaxed. If you call me that, Mom will get it for you. If he still didn't call, Murphy would have to help him get it. Tong Tong obviously didn't call. He pursed his little mouth and felt wronged. Tong Tong felt that his mother didn't love him anymore when he couldn't find the toy he liked, and his mother didn't help him. All right, Mom will get it for you. Murphy helplessly patted the little guy's head gently. She walked over and picked up Tong Tong's plastic shovel from under the bed. She even took a piece of cloth and wiped the dust on it before passing it to Tong Tong. When Tong Tong saw his mother pick up the plastic shovel from under the bed, he clapped his hands happily. Looking at how happy he was, his little mouth opened, revealing a few white teeth. He was grinning from ear to ear. Murphy passed the plastic shovel to him. Tong Tong smiled at his mother with his cute little dimples. Then, he grabbed the shovel and shook his little hands excitedly. His little butt moved back and forth as he called out, Baba Baba. Look at how happy you are. Murphy was amused. This was the good thing about her son. He was easy to satisfy. Wait a minute, something seemed wrong. After Murphy finished speaking, she realized that Tong Tong seemed to have called out something just now. Huawei, did you just call Daddy? Murphy asked in surprise. She even tried to use different pronunciations to guide him. Daddy Papa? Tong Tong probably thought that this was a happy tone, and was guided by it. He giggled and called out crisply, Baba. This time, Murphy really heard it clearly. It really was Daddy, although the pronunciation wasn't very accurate. But the little guy could call out Daddy. And it wasn't by accident. He could call it out very smoothly and could even repeat it. At this moment, Murphy's emotions were mixed with excitement and a little jealousy. Little brat, your mother clearly picked it up for you. Why didn't you call me Mommy? Why did you call me Daddy? Of course, this was a huge improvement for Tong Tong. Murphy suppressed her surprise and confirmed it a few more times. Then Murphy ran out with Tong Tong in her arms. She pushed open Yang Yi's door and shouted excitedly, Yang Yi, your son can call Daddy. Chapter 806. Call me Grandpa. No, that's too difficult. Call me Grandpa. Come Grandpa. In the morning of the second day, Emohenian's voice rose and fell in the garden-style courtyard full of life. His originally rough voice was now so gentle that it caused goosebumps to rise all over one's body. It might be a little difficult to call him Grandpa. Let's try calling him Grandma. Zhou Mingyu was also grinning from ear to ear. She even used her awkward Mandarin to coax the mainland grandson in her arms. Little Momo didn't know what they were doing. He thought his grandfather and grandmother were playing with him. The little fellow was in a good mood early in the morning. He grinned and giggled nonstop. Sigh, why didn't he call me that? Zhou Mingyu said regretfully. Forget it. I tried to coax him to call me Mom yesterday, but he still couldn't do it. Not to mention Grandma and Grandpa, those are too difficult. Mo Fei sat on the side and shook her head helplessly. Little brother can say Baba. Shishi had just finished washing up. She came over and said excitedly, but it's not Baba, it's Papa. Baba. Tong Tong seemed to like this pronunciation. When he heard his sister call him that, his eyes lit up and he called out loudly. Hee, don't call me Baba. I'm your sister. Shishi saw her little brother looking at her, and could not help but make a funny face at him. Yang Yi was the only one who did not come over to join in the fun. He was helping to organize the things they needed to bring for today's trip. Most of them were Tong Tong's daily necessities. However, Yang Yi did not need to join in the fun. He had played with Tong Tong for a long time with Murphy last night. Yang Yi was already satisfied to hear his son call him Daddy. He did not need to go over to show off and attract hatred. It was obviously impossible for Mommy to learn more names in one day. After breakfast, Yang Yi drove his father-in-law's jeep, took Mo Fei and the children, and said goodbye to their grandparents, who were reluctant to leave, and set off for Fort Worth. Yang Yi can drive in the U.S. Of course, he needed to use his domestic driver's license to apply for a temporary driver's license. There was no need to elaborate on the process. Anyway, he had only received his temporary driver's license a few days ago. Finally, he didn't have to trouble his father-in-law to drive him. Yang Yi didn't have a temporary driver's license, but he still dared to drive Doug's car to return it to him. That was because no one would check the small roads between farms. The distance between Fort Worth and Big Prairie Town was closer than the distance between Big Prairie Town and Cow City. This was also why Murphy went to school here. However, in terms of the scale of the two cities, Cow City was still slightly larger. Yang Yi and the others arrived at Fort Worth in just over an hour. It's been a few years since I've been here. This city always gives off a peaceful energy. Murphy looked at the buildings outside the car window and said to Yang Yi emotionally, After I gave birth to Shishi, I often brought Shishi here to relax and walk around the parks and shops here. Mama, have I been here before? Cece asked curiously as she listened from the side. Yes, but you were still young then. You had to sit in the same pram as your brother when you went out. Maybe you don't remember. Murphy smiled and patted Shishi's head. Actually, Murphy's evaluation of this city was a little strange. Fort Worth could give her peace because she was more antisocial and preferred to be alone most of the time. This city was actually not peaceful. Instead, it represented the passionate cowboy culture. Yes, Fort Worth could represent the cowboy culture. A few centuries ago, it was the hub of cattle and sheep transportation in the United States. It was the beginning of the West, and even had a hall of fame for cowboys. However, Yang Yi did not want to understand the cowboy culture today. He wanted to be with Murphy and follow her footsteps as she grew up, and explore the lonely times she had spent alone. Right, do you still remember Steve Van's violin that I gave you? I bought it in a shop here. I'll take you to see it later. Emma Faye felt that she was a little too immersed in her memories. In fact, she should be in a very happy mood, so she became happy again and said with a smile, "Cece, by the way, there is a very delicious ice cream shop nearby. The ice cream is very finely ground, and there is a layer of peanuts sprinkled on top. Mom bought it for you before. Do you still remember?" Hearing her mother's words, she blinked her big eyes. She tilted her little head and tried hard to remember. The little girl's memory was very good, but she had to look past the delicious food that her father had made for her in the past few years to find the ice cream from almost 3 years ago. She was confused for a while. Then her eyes suddenly lit up. "I remember, it's super delicious ice cream." Yongyi smiled and said, "Okay then, let's go to your school today, then to the antique shop, and then to eat ice cream, okay?" "Okay," she answered crisply. She and her mother looked at each other and smiled. Their eyes curved like crescent moons. It was very beautiful. At the same time, on the street outside the cattle and sheep market in the south of Fort Worth, a huge truck was slowly coming to a stop. "Kaplan, there are no cameras here, right?" In the driver's seat, 2 men were carrying their backpacks and asking the driver. In the passenger seat, the cameraman was turning the small handheld camera to aim at them. The driver named Kaplan smiled and said, "Don't worry, absolutely not. I know the situation here best. Hey Jermaine, good luck." That's right, these 2 were the relatives who had filmed the American reality show Undercover Tracking, in California, Jermaine and Hill. They had not seen each other for half a month, and they had unknowingly escaped to Texas. "Thank you, Kaplan. Thank you so much for your help." Jermaine shook hands with Kaplan. "Say hi to Jeff for me." After Jermaine and Hill got out of the car, they pressed down the brim of their hats and walked quickly along the side of the road. After an unknown amount of time, Jermaine and Hill found a street park and sat down on a bench that they confirmed was not captured by the camera. Hill said, "Jermaine, do you think those people can find out that we came from Arizona?" "It's hard to say." Jermaine did not look relaxed. He sighed and said, "I didn't expect them to be able to find out my contact with my family through the postal system. This kind of technical ability is really impressive. But the good news is that they haven't cracked our mailbox yet. Even if they did, they might not be able to decipher our messages from the secret code we wrote in the draft box. At least not in a short period of time. So we withdrew the money in Arizona, then fled to Texas a few hours later, crossing Mexico in the process. I don't think they would have found out about our whereabouts. Otherwise, they would have caught up with our car. Trucks have GPS," Jermaine repeated. "But we can't stop. I'm still a little worried." Jermaine's worry was reasonable. At that moment, in the arrest command center in California, the hunters, who were angry that Jermaine had tricked them again, were carefully looking for any clues that Jermaine might reveal. "Tony, I found something." An Asian female investigator called Tony, the supervisor. She pointed to the computer screen and said, "Look at these 3 videos. The first one was taken by the camera of the convenience store near the ATM. Look, Hill, who withdrew the money, passed by here at 5:13 p.m. The Asian female investigator clicked on the second video, pointed to the road sketch she had drawn on an empty piece of paper, and said, "This camera is on this side of the road. This truck drove by at 5:01 p.m. If it was driving normally, it should have passed by this camera very quickly, right?" Tony nodded. He reacted quickly. "I'm guessing that the third video is from this camera here?" "Yes. But I can't see the truck driving in this video. Let's fast forward a little more. It only passed by this camera at 5:26 p.m. The Asian female investigator laughed. "So the question is, in these 25 minutes, on this road without any forks, what did the truck do? Do you have a picture of the driver's seat?" Tony asked. The Asian female investigator shook her head. "But I can get the license plate number from the video." "Do it. There must be something wrong with this truck," Tony said firmly. "I want you to get the license plate number, check the driver's information, and compare him with the people Jermaine and Hill know to see if they have any relationship. Also confirm where the truck drove to. I want the company that owns the truck to provide its GPS information." Chapter 807. Yang Yi and Murphy didn't care about how many scenic spots they could visit. On the contrary, they really took their leisure time to the extreme. Their carefree pace was so slow that it made one's hair stand on end. They walked around Murphy's elementary school and took all kinds of photos as a souvenir. The morning passed in the blink of an eye. Similarly, in the afternoon, they went to the antique shop that Murphy mentioned and took Shishi to pick out 2 gifts for Grandpa and Grandma. More than half of the day had passed. Let's go eat ice cream. After that, we'll walk around St. Lucas Square and then go back, Murphy suggested. Otherwise, it'll be dark before we go back. We're going back so soon? Going shopping was fun. Shishi was still a little unsatisfied. Of course, more importantly, she could go shopping with her parents. In China, there weren't many opportunities like this. It's better to go back early so that Grandpa and Grandma won't be worried. Yang Yi patted his daughter's shoulder and smiled. Didn't you say that you want to eat ice cream? I've heard you talk about it all day. Yes, I want to eat ice cream. Papa, let's go eat ice cream. Shishi came to her senses. She immediately took her father's hand and walked in front of him impatiently. The ice cream shop that Murphy mentioned was next to St. Lucas Square. It was a small tin shop that stood alone on the side of the road like a newspaper stand. However, although the ice cream shop was small, there were many customers outside. Those who were waiting had already formed a small line. The climate in Texas was dry and hot in the summer, so there was less moisture in the air. Especially in the hot afternoon. A spoonful of cold and delicious ice cream was definitely a heavenly enjoyment. After waiting in line for a while, it was finally Yang Yi's turn to buy ice cream. What kind of cup do you want? The ice cream seller was a middle-aged woman. However, her smile was just as bright and she gave people a feeling of friendliness. We have small cups, medium cups, large cups, and super large cups. Small cup, medium cup, large cup, super large cup. Yang Yi paused. How big is it? The middle-aged woman smiled and did not gesture to Yang Yi. Instead, she took out a few paper tubes and showed them to Yang Yi. The small cup was similar to an ordinary sundae, the medium cup was like a water glass, the large cup was a bit like a beer mug in a bar, and the large cup. It was really super big, almost as big as a popcorn bucket, and it needed to be hugged to eat. No wonder Americans are so fat. I want an extra large cup. She couldn't see what the shop assistant was displaying, but she couldn't wait to jump up and down and shout happily in English. A super large cup is too big for you. You won't be able to finish it. Murphy smiled. A small cup is just right. It won't cause a stomachache. From the oversized cup to the smallest cup, the difference was too big. She shook her head anxiously. No, I want to eat a lot of ice cream. Shishi's mother often played the bad guy, so she looked at her father. She held her father's hand and asked him for help. Papa, I don't want to eat a small cup. I want to eat a super large cup. There are so many super large cups. Yang Yi smiled and gestured. Your head can fit in it. How can you finish it? Shishi looked at her father in surprise. Her eyes couldn't move as if she was wondering who could finish such a big cup. However, she still wanted to eat a lot of ice cream. What should she do? If I can't finish it, Papa can help me finish it. Shishi suddenly had an idea and said happily. They couldn't discuss for too long. There were still people waiting in line. Yang Yi thought of a compromise. Well, let's buy 2 medium cups and 1 small cup. Shishi, try and see if you can finish the medium cup. If you can't, Papa will help you finish the rest. If you can finish it, you can eat a small cup, okay? Papa won't eat it first. 1 small cup, 1 medium cup, it's almost a large cup. Yang Yi said. In fact, 2 medium cups were almost a large cup. Yang Yi blurred this concept. Shishi balanced it, and felt that a large cup was enough. She happily agreed. The strawberry-flavored one is delicious. There are also blueberry-flavored ones. Of course, the milk-flavored one is the purest. You can also try it. The rest was left to Murphy. She explained to Yang Yi excitedly, and told the shop assistant her choice. After a while, Yang Yi came to a stone table under the shade of a tree with Murphy, who was pushing a baby stroller, and Shishi, who couldn't wait to jump around her father, carrying an eco-friendly paper box. Opening the paper box, The snow-white milk ice cream was like a snowy mountain. There were some fine peanuts sprinkled on top of the small cup, as if there were a few more rugged stones on the snowy mountain. It didn't destroy its original beauty at all. But the other two ice creams were beautiful. The bright red jam of the strawberry ice cream was like fresh water, which was inlaid on the sides of the snowy mountain. The blueberry jam of the blueberry ice cream was kneaded into the ice cream. The whole snowy mountain was light purple, and there were a few frosty blueberries on it. Wow! I want to eat it so much. She snuggled up to her father and looked at the real thing in surprise. She couldn't help but lick her lips, revealing a small section of her pink tongue. She picked the most colorful strawberry ice cream. The little girl couldn't bear to sit down, so she stood by the table and scooped a little with a small spoon and put it into her mouth. Mm. The little girl's beautiful big eyes were curved. The sweet taste of the ice cream was expressed in her expression. Is it good? Yang-yi asked with a smile. He wasn't in a hurry to eat. He promised Shishi that he would reserve a small cup of ice cream for her. Moreover, Yang-yi didn't have much desire for ice cream, unlike Shishi and Murphy who liked it as much. It's good, it's good. Shishi scooped another big spoonful. This time, after she finished eating, she grabbed the small spoon and jumped up excitedly. Her two small hands were still shaking there, as if it was so delicious that she was about to fly. Hubby, eat with me. Murphy scooped up a piece of blueberry ice cream with her spoon and handed it to Yang-yi's mouth. His wife loved him the most. At this time, Yang-yi didn't care about Murphy's spoon. He bowed his head and sucked it. As he tasted it, he looked at Murphy's eyes, which were full of love. Is mine delicious? Murphy said with a smile. Blueberry flavor, it and strawberry flavor are my favorite. Your ice cream is good. It should be handmade. It has a fine sand texture, a clear sense of layering, and the taste is very good, Yang-yi said with a smile. I also want to eat blueberry flavor. Cece was eating her strawberry-flavored ice cream when she heard her father's praise. Now she looked over eagerly. Try it. Murphy handed it over. She happily scooped a mouthful and tasted it. It's also delicious, but mine is better. But the little girl seemed to be inspired by the interaction between her mom and dad. She didn't eat alone. She generously pushed out her ice cream and said, Papa, Mom, you also eat my ice cream. Let's eat together. In the end, they decided to eat together. She happily scooped here and there, feeling that all the ice cream was hers. This kind of enjoyment was indescribable. Anyway, she could smile at her father for a while with a small spoon in her mouth. Of course, she didn't eat much. The little girl was full in a while. There was still a small half cup left. She pushed it to her father, and then sat on the stone chair contentedly, enjoying a moment of silence. Yang-yi cleaned up the mess and looked down at his daughter's satisfied appearance. He couldn't help but laugh. On this hot summer afternoon, sitting leisurely in the square with her beloved family, and eating ice cream leisurely, this feeling was really good. If only there was a little music to accompany her, that would be even better. Yang-yi looked at the stage in the middle of St. Lucas Square. Murphy had introduced it to Yang-yi before. This was a municipal square. There were usually some performances, not only the activities of cowboys, but also some performances of the community's old people's art groups and so on. There were some people on the stage now setting up some settings and equipment. There would probably be some performances in the evening. However, what attracted Yang-yi's attention was a piano that was displayed early on. Murphy and he saw it just now. Although it was only a vertical piano, it was still a piano. Chapter 808. Jermaine Lee and his partner, Hill, were in the most dangerous situation they had encountered in the past 10 days. They were being chased by hunters, and they were getting closer than they had ever been. 10 minutes ago, the truck driver, Kaplan, had called them on their cell phones and told them that when he was about to leave Fort Worth with a full load of goods, the hunters had caught up with him. The hunters had searched the truck and even questioned the driver. Kaplan didn't reveal any information to the hunters. However, what made Jermaine and Hill break out in cold sweat was that they were walking around Fort Worth, looking for a place to spend the night. Unexpectedly, after walking for a day, they were coincidentally only 2 blocks away from the spot where the hunters had stopped the truck. At this moment, they were only 2 blocks away from the hunter. Germain and Hill broke out in cold sweat. After thanking Kaplan, they threw away the disposable phone that they had used for a long time and quickly ran in the opposite direction from where the hunters were. 10 minutes later, Germain regained his composure. He patted Hill on the shoulder and said, "We can't keep running like this. Let's sit down and discuss this." Germain and Hill, who happened to be near St. Lucas Square, found a relatively secluded corner of the square where there were no cameras, and sat down at a stone table. "We can't outrun a car with our feet," Germain said to Hill. "What I'm worried about now is how they found us so quickly," Hill said worriedly. "I suspect that they've already found out that we used the draft box in our new mailbox to contact our family and friends." "You're right. We can't use this plan for the time being." Germain nodded lightly. "When we find a place to stay, we'll comb through it carefully and see what we missed out on." "Okay. Like before, we'll look for a private hotel first. There should be some private hotels along the roads in the suburbs that don't require identification." Hill agreed. For the next few days, they would either stay at a friend's house or stay at a private hotel like this. "No, we can't go to a private hotel." Germain shook his head. He had thought about it carefully. If they found out our route before, they would definitely know how we look for a place to stay. Now they should be checking all the private hotels and motels in Fort Worth. These people know that we're in Fort Worth. We can't give them a chance. Then what should we do? Hill hesitated. Should we try to ask strangers for help? I was thinking about that too. If we ask for help from strangers, we'll be in great danger. We don't know if the strangers will expose us, Hill said hesitantly. Just as they were in a dilemma, the sound of a piano playing suddenly came from the stage in the middle of San Lucas Square. The soft and beautiful sound of the piano attracted the attention of everyone in the square, including Germain and Hill. Germain, Hill, and the cameraman all subconsciously turned their heads and turned their cameras to look over. On the stage, there was an Asian man sitting in front of the piano. His posture was tall and straight, and his long fingers were like butterflies, flying up and down on the keys. That beautiful melody was obviously played with such confidence and elegance. This Asian man was of course Yang Yi. When you listened to this music, you could not help but be attracted by the focused expression on Yang Yi's face when he played on stage. But what you saw was Yang Yi's fluctuating and rhythmic wrist, while your mind was filled with the soothing sound of the piano. Originally, the person in charge of setting up the equipment on stage looked at Yang Yi with some worry. However, as he listened to Yang Yi's performance, he, who was also very knowledgeable about music, could tell that Yang Yi's playing skills were excellent even though he couldn't tell the origin of the song. The person in charge liked music, so he liked Yang Yi's performance and this beautiful piece of music, and hoped to share it with more people. He quietly turned up the volume of the microphone facing the piano, so that the whole San Lucas Square could hear Yang Yi's piano playing. It's a beautiful song and a wonderful performance. Germain and Hill's discussion stopped. Their attention was attracted by the piano sound, and Hill could not help but mutter to himself. The cameraman was more responsible. When he heard Hill's words, he pointed the camera at them. Germain could not help but comment, "This song has the power to calm people down." After the song, Yang Yi did not intend to come down. He asked the person in charge to bring him a microphone and put it on a shelf above the piano. "I want to sing a song for the person I love the most," Yang Yi said simply, his palm pointing in the direction of Murphy and the children. The passers-by who were intoxicated by Yang Yi's performance just now laughed and applauded. Foreigners did not like to be reserved. This kind of generous expression of love was more recognized by them. However, Germain and Hill broke out in cold sweat. At this time, they realized that the Asian man's family was sitting at a table not far from them. "What should we do?" Hill asked. "Should we leave?" "Don't move. Many people are watching. Keep a low profile," Germain said. On the stage, Yang Yi played again. Germain found that he was still playing the song just now. He could not help but smile and said to Hill, "This is just a coincidence. Let's listen to the song." These days, Germain had been running around and fighting with the hunters. Germain's spirit had been tense. Now listening to the man playing and singing, he finally had a chance to relax. The song on the stage was about to pass the prelude. When the piano sound gradually became low, Yang Yi also began to sing affectionately, "If I have to live my life with you near me." Although it was only semi-professional sound equipment, the sound was clear enough. Yang Yi's voice, accompanied by the gentle piano sound, spread throughout the whole place. The professional singing, with a deep and magnetic voice, immediately captured the hearts of the audience in the square. The lyrics were also warm and healing. "If I have to live without you by my side, those days will become empty, those nights will become long. Being with you, I see the future so clearly." It wasn't very straightforward, but one could still read the deep love between the lines. Germain was mesmerized by the song, especially when the song gradually reached its climax. "Hold me now, touch me now, I don't want to live with you. Nothing's gonna change my love for you." Yes, the song Yang Yi was playing and singing was the classic theme song of the Bridges of Forgotten Dreams. "Nothing's gonna change my love for you." The originally slow rhythm suddenly became brisk. Yang Yi's singing also showed everyone his strong singing skills. "Oh my God, are we listening to a concert?" A young man who was drinking beer below the stage could not help but ask his friend. "I don't know, but I know how deep his love for his wife is." His friend shook his head. "How do you know that is his wife? Didn't he only say that she is his lover?" "Look, they both have children, 2 children. His friend rolled his eyes. "Can't you just let me listen to the song properly?" Germain, who was not disturbed, was mesmerized. Although he could not judge Yang Yi's singing skills, he liked Yang Yi's song very much. "I love Linda. She and the children must have been waiting for me at home for a long time." Germain listened to the song and thought of his wife and children. "I think I will love them too. Nothing can change my love for you." In Germain's selfie diary that was later edited by the director, he also mentioned this matter. "Today, after listening to Yang's song, I feel like my body is filled with energy. The passion to continue fighting with the hunters has returned. I made a bold decision. I will meet my wife under the eyes of the hunters." Chapter 809. Murphy liked Yang Yi's song very much. However, listening to Yang Yi's warm and affectionate singing, her heart was only filled with pride and love for Yang Yi, and not too much surprise. In fact, she had heard Yang Yi sing this song on the farm, because Wilson would arrange a Prada talk show for Yang Yi and Mo Fei, although they would have to wait until August to appear on the program. However, Yang Yi still took out a few English songs early and practiced with them. "Nothing's gonna change my love for you" was one of them. But to be honest, the feeling at home was completely different from the live performance. On one hand, there was no piano at home, only a guitar. On the other hand, Murphy, a professional singer, always felt that the space at home was small, and there was no audience, so there was a lack of atmosphere. So when Yang Yi said that he wanted to play a piano piece for Murphy on the stage, Murphy said that she wanted to listen to "Nothing's Gonna Change My Love for You." And Yang Yi naturally fulfilled her wish. "Hey, why do I feel like I'm forcing him to confess to me in public again?" Murphy stood up and applauded with the others. Suddenly, such a thought came to her mind. However, Murphy was still happy in her heart. "We're already an old married couple. Actually, we don't have to show off our love in front of others every day. However, he still loves me very much and is willing to satisfy my little vanity." After Yang Yi thanked the person in charge, he walked down from the stage slowly. Murphy was ready to give him a big hug. However, just as Yang Yi walked over, his eyes fell on the table behind Murphy and Shishi, and then on Germain and Gil's table. Especially when he saw the camera facing him, he couldn't help but frown slightly. "Papa's singing is so good." Shishi didn't jump up to greet her father this time. Instead, she leaned lazily on the back of the chair and knelt on the chair, unwilling to get up. She even giggled and waved to her father, then sat down lazily. She had eaten too many sweets and was now in a lazy digestion period. However, Shishi saw that her father didn't respond. Instead, he hugged her mother a little and walked behind them. "Who are you? Why are you taking pictures of us with a camera? Do you know that this is illegal?" Yang Yi asked solemnly. He had adapted very quickly. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. In the United States, people always put their human rights first. Shishi turned around in confusion, and saw her father talking to a table not far behind them. Jermaine and Gil didn't expect that the man they were praising just a moment ago would point his finger at them as soon as he came down. Gil looked at Jermaine, but Jermaine decided to be honest. "We are recording a show. I'm really sorry. This is our cameraman. If you don't want us to take pictures of you, we can delete the video or add mosaic. I'm sorry, but the song you sang just now was really good." Recording a show? Yang Yi was a little suspicious. "Are you American stars?" In fact, Yang Yi believed a little, because he had been observing the three people from the moment he set his eyes on them. From their clothes, from the distribution of their seats, from the guy with the camera, and so on, he could basically infer a few things. First of all, the three people didn't pose a threat and didn't carry any dangerous items. Secondly, the guy with the camera should be a cameraman. He was the same as the cameraman of the Extreme Challenge. He tried his best to hide his presence, and no matter what, he didn't put down his camera. Also, looking at their travel-worn appearance, they must have suffered a lot. If they weren't recording a show, who would torture themselves like that? Jermaine and Gil quickly explained to Yang Yi that they were two ordinary people who had volunteered to join the reality show on SBC. "You can search for tracking. Our show is like this. It was originally a reality show in England, but the rights to the remake were bought by SBC, Jermaine said. Jermaine was worried that Yang Yi would call the police to arrest them to protect his family, so he told them everything. "You escaped from California? You can't even use planes or other forms of transportation that require IDs. That's quite amazing," Yang Yi said, a little surprised. This show was against the hunters who had the ability to track people. It was like a competition between a killer and a police officer. Yang Yi's interest was piqued. "We borrowed a friend's truck," Gil said. However, even though Yang Yi was very interested in the show and Jermaine's escape, he wasn't a person who was easily controlled by his own desires. Yang Yi smiled, shook hands with the other party and said, "Okay, I misunderstood. I hope you can beat these people and win the prize money." While Jermaine and Gil were still confused and nodding their heads, Yang Yi had already returned to his seat. "What's going on?" Murphy asked curiously. "Are they reporters?" She could finally sit next to her father. As she leaned on her father's body, she looked back curiously at the two people who had just talked to her father. Yang Yi explained to Murphy again, but Yang Yi was still worried. After the incident with LVU, Yang Yi still had to catch everything that made him suspicious and investigate it thoroughly. He couldn't make the stupid mistake of being careless and failing miserably again. As he talked to Murphy, he sent a text message to Wilson, who was in California, to help him secretly investigate the situation of the show. "We should go back." Murphy wasn't as interested in such a show as Yang Yi was. She looked at the time, stood up, and suggested with a smile, "It's already past 4 o'clock. We can go back in time for dinner." She got up from the chair, touched her bulging belly, and said with a smile, "Papa, I don't want to eat anymore. I'm so full." "Didn't I tell you not to eat so much ice cream? You still don't believe me. Maybe you'll suffer later." Murphy gently flicked Shishi's forehead and said angrily, "Your papa indulges you. Each of you should be punished 50 times. Shishi was flicked, and the corners of her mouth curved down. She looked unhappy. Of course, she did it on purpose. She turned around and threw herself into her father's arms. Her two little arms hugged her father's neck like a spoiled child, and she chirped, "Don't scold my papa. And don't hit my papa." The little girl's eyes were curved like crescent moons. She was playing with her mother. After eating a lot of sweets, the little girl had a lot of energy and didn't know how to squander it. Murphy put her hands on her waist and said with a smile, "Oh, you're still protecting him? This is my husband. Can't I say a few words? This is my papa." Yang Yi shook his head with a smile. He picked up Shishi like a koala and asked Murphy to push Tong Tong to the place where the jeep was parked. Although they were talking in Chinese and no one could understand them, Yang Yi still didn't want his family's situation to be recorded by the camera. While walking, Mo Fei was still bickering with Cece excitedly. "What's so great about your daddy? He's my husband. Of course, my husband came first, and then you were born. He's your papa, so I'm the most important." Shishi was forced into a corner. She leaned on her father's shoulder and had an idea. She smiled and said, "Then Papa is also my husband." "He's not your husband anymore." Chapter 8:10. Yang Xiaoxi. Say that again. Although Murphy rebuked her, she could not help but smile. She was amused by her daughter's words. Hee 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 hee. She hugged her father's neck and looked at her mother over his shoulder. She giggled and did not look ashamed at all. Instead, she found her mother's exasperated look very interesting. "Humph, I raised you for 6 years for nothing. How dare you steal Mom's husband?" Murphy asked Yang Yi to help hold down the baby stroller that Tong Tong was sitting in. She chased after Shi and stretched out her hand to torture her by tickling her. Hee hee. The little girl was very ticklish. She twisted in her father's arms and burst into a burst of pleasant laughter. "Papa, protect me." The little girl was laughing so hard that her breathing was a little uneven. She took the time to call out, "Humph, you're calling me Papa now? What did you say just now?" Murphy snickered and continued to retaliate. "Do you know that you're wrong?" However, she did not scratch much. She was very ticklish, and her reaction was very strong. At this moment, Tong Tong, who was lying comfortably in the baby stroller, had his eyes wide open. He looked at his mother's violence toward his sister, and the word dumbfounded was written all over his little face. It was too scary. After Murphy and Shi were done, Yang Yi smiled and shook his head. He took them to the parking lot and got his Jeep. He adjusted the safety seat and prepared to leave. However, just as the Jeep drove out of the parking lot, Yang Yi caught a glimpse of Germain and Gil, who were on the side of the road with their arms outstretched and thumbs up, wanting to hitch a ride. The cameraman was following them, but was now hiding in a corner and secretly taking pictures. "It's them." The Jeep passed by them. Murphy saw it too and said in surprise, "Why are they out too?" "They're hitching a ride. They're probably leaving Fort Worth." Yang Yi explained. "They want to escape from the hunting team of the program. It's not a good idea to stay in the same city for too long." "Papa, are they bad guys?" Shi, who was sitting next to her mother, suddenly asked. "No, why do you ask?" Yang Yi asked with a smile. Yang Yi had already confirmed the identities of these people from Wilson. There were no secrets in Hollywood. In just 10 minutes, Wilson was able to find the list of participants and filming plans for the first season of SBC's Undercover Tracking through his connections. This wasn't really a secret, it was just that the SBC didn't announce it online. The shooting plan was just as Germain and the others had said. The shooting would start in July, and Germain and Hill's names were on the list, which basically confirmed their identities. Because they were being chased by hunters. Only bad guys like big bad wolves would be chased by hunters. She said innocently. "Haha, you can't be so sure. There are two sides to everything. Some hunters can be good, and some can be bad. The same goes for big bad wolves. The bad ones are called big bad wolves, and the good ones are called huskies," Yang Yi said with a laugh. "Nonsense." Murphy couldn't help but chuckle. How can huskies be the same as wolves? She was confused. She asked in a daze, "Papa, are they good or bad wolves?" "They're not big bad wolves, nor are they bad guys. They're just playing a game. In this game, they're being chased by hunters, so you can think of hunters as big bad guys." Yang Yi laughed. She blinked her big eyes and continued, "Papa, we can help them defeat the big bad guys." "What?" Yang Yi thought he had misheard. "Hunters are big bad guys. We'll help them defeat the big bad guys." She waved her little fist in her baby seat and said excitedly, "Do you want to help them?" Yang Yi was a little surprised. "Yes, Papa. It's just like how Grandpa Hunter helped Little Red Riding Hood save Grandma," the little girl said innocently. "Honey, what do you think?" Yang Yi looked at Murphy through the rearview mirror. Murphy looked interested and said, "You said they're recording a program and want to win the prize money. It's just like those quiz competitions. They can ask for off-site assistance, and we can help them. In this way, they can win the prize money." Yang Yi shook his head helplessly and said, "Well, since you all said so, let's go back and have a look. If they can't stop a car, we can give them a ride." More than 10 minutes later, the fully loaded Jeep was on its way back home. Thank you so much. I've received so much help from so many friends along the way. I feel so full of positive energy. Sitting in the last row, Jermaine said with a smile. Yang Yi's father-in-law's Jeep was an old 7-seater Jeep. Usually, the seats in the last row would be put down to make room for luggage. Now there were 7 people in it, including Tong Tong. Murphy and the children were still sitting in the second row. Although Yang Yi had helped them according to Shishi's request, he had to ensure the comfort and safety of his family first. The cameraman sat in the passenger seat, while Jermaine and Hill squeezed in the last row. Of course, they didn't have any complaints. They were already very lucky that someone was willing to take them away from the crisis in Fort Worth. Don't thank me. You should thank my daughter. She said that she would help you defeat the big bad guy. Yang Yi was driving in the front. He looked at the rearview mirror and smiled as he pointed at Shishi. Shishi turned her head to look at him, then turned away shyly and shyly hid in her mother's arms. Thank you, child. You have a beautiful heart. By the way, I have to say that I have a child about your age, but he's a boy. My daughter is only 3 years old. Jermaine looked at Shishi and smiled happily. Really? How many children do you have? Yang Yi asked. I have 2. You've seen them. We have 4. One of them is still in my wife's belly. Jermaine smiled proudly. So many? That's too hard. Murphy said, a little surprised. Linda likes children more, Jermaine explained. On the way, they chatted casually. Soon, Jermaine found out that Yang Yi and Murphy were from China, and that they were on vacation at his father-in-law's farm. Your songs are really good. Really, I don't think they're any worse than those singers who have released records. Hill exclaimed. That's because my wife is a professional singer in China. She has released many records and has tens of millions of fans in China. Yang Yi smiled. As for me, I'm also a professional singer. It's only because of my wife's influence that I can sing well. Really? Hill and Jermaine were surprised. They met a celebrity today? Although Americans didn't think much of celebrities, a celebrity with tens of millions of fans should be very impressive, right? Murphy smiled. Seeing that Yang Yi had said it, she said, in America, Yang is more famous than me. Have you heard the song, I'm Yours, that he composed and sang? Jermaine shook her head in confusion. Wait. Hill was a young man after all. His eyes lit up and he tried hard to remember. Let me think. I remember now. Yang, you're the Asian singer who sang on the beach? Oh my God. Seriously, I saw that video of yours 2 months ago. I remember now. It's you. But I can't find that song. Hill was excited. The cameraman was so surprised that he couldn't close his mouth. Although he didn't say anything, he held the camera and hurriedly took pictures. Such a coincidental encounter, whether it was post-editing or as a trailer, would be very important material. Of course, after a brief chat, they returned to the main topic. Jermaine, what are your plans? Yang Yi asked. Jermaine hesitated for a moment and said, we want to find a farm to stay in because their cameras are everywhere. If we can stay in a place with fewer electronic devices, we might be able to escape from their pursuit. Your escape plan is very clear and correct. Now you really need to minimize the use of electronic devices, including the disposable phones that you use to contact your family. After the call, you must remove the battery and SIM card. Smash the phone and destroy the SIM card. Yang Yi reminded them. Yang, we were wondering if we could ask you for a favor. Before Jermaine could finish, Yang Yi understood what he meant. He smiled and said, you want to stay at my father-in-law's farm? If it were any other time, I would agree to it, but not now. Chapter 8:11. Why not? Not only were Jermaine and Hill dumbfounded, but even Murphy looked at Yang Yi in confusion. Luckily, Yang Yi did not keep them in suspense. He explained, because if you go to my father-in-law's place, you might be caught by the hunters. Let me break it down for you. First of all, you just said that you threw away your phones when you received Kaplan's call. But it's useless. They can use technology to locate your last location through Kaplan's phone. Then, according to the surveillance cameras along the way, they'll be able to trace your escape route and chase you all the way to St. Lucas Square. Although it will take time, Trust me, they'll definitely find you there. Yang Yi was right. Not long after the fully loaded Jeep left, a black SUV slowly drove into St. Lucas Square. When they got back to the Jeep, Jermaine said in surprise, "I see. Is that how they found out that I came to Fort Worth?" Yang Yi shook his head lightly and said, "I don't know. There's too little information. I can't tell. But our previous interactions were not captured by the surveillance cameras. There were no surveillance cameras at the place where we hitched a ride. How could they track us?" Hill said. "When we were talking in St. Lucas Square, although we were sitting in a blind spot of the surveillance cameras, it wasn't a place where the cameras couldn't capture. They couldn't have guessed that we had been in contact." Yang Yi explained to them casually as he drove. "It's simple. There are 2 surveillance cameras around. The first one saw you pass by, and the second one saw that you didn't go out. They can basically pinpoint your location, and they can also pinpoint our location in the same area as yours." Seeing Yang Yi's relaxed attitude, Mo Fei, who was sitting behind him, couldn't help but fall into a daze. Mo Fei didn't care about how the men were scheming against each other. What she liked was Yang Yi's confidence in strategizing. But how could they deduce our relationship with just this? There were many people in the square. We could have talked to anyone, Jermaine asked, puzzled. They will investigate everyone in this area. Trust me, Yang Yi said. Even if they can't find out who I am, they can find my car through the nearby public cameras. Most importantly, my car has turned back to pick you up. This will be the biggest flaw, Yang Yi said calmly, as if he wasn't talking about himself. Didn't you say that they can use all their resources? With their current technological capabilities, I'm guessing that they'll only need a day to track me down, or even sooner. Is it that terrifying? Hill exclaimed. You can even find out where there are no cameras. Yang Yi smiled. That's why I didn't want to bring you to my father-in-law's farm. Although our farm is big, if they track you down in the middle of the night, you won't be able to escape. Murphy asked doubtfully. Then what should we do? Should we drop them off at the side of the road? Yes, we can find another car by ourselves. I'm really sorry for causing you so much trouble, Jermaine said guiltily. Previously, we were looking for people we knew, and we had an agreement with them. This time, our plan has been disrupted. But my daughter said that she hopes that I can help you. Yang Yi changed the topic. So, although you can't stay in our farm, we can still find someone to help you. It was nearly 6 o'clock when they returned to the farm. The sky was getting dark. Because they had called in advance, Doug and one of his sons were already waiting at their house. When Yang Yi and the rest returned, Doug arranged for Jermaine and Hill to sit in his family's off-road vehicle. Don't worry, they can stay at our house tonight. Tomorrow, I'll get my men to send them to our holiday cabin in the forest. No one will be able to find it. Doug waved his hand and said generously, Thank you, sir. When Hill got in the car, he thanked Doug. As for their gratitude to Yang Yi and his family, they had already said it many times in the car, and after they got out of the car. In the words of the country, it was simply a stroke of good luck. Yang Yi directly arranged the best shelter for them to hide from hunters. Doug waved his hand indifferently. You are Yang's friends, so you are my friends. The cowboys from Texas were like chivalrous men. They were so forthright and righteous. Of course, it was also because of Yang Yi's help. If it wasn't for Yang Yi's recommendation, Doug and the rest wouldn't have paid attention to these gentle young men from the city. Looking at Doug driving the 2 uncles away, she stood beside her father and reached out her little hand for her father to hold. Then she asked expectantly, Papa, did we help them defeat the bad guys? Yang Yi gently held his daughter's little hand and smiled. This is just the beginning. If we help them, Grandpa Doug, Grandpa Beria, and many others will help them. I believe that they will defeat the bad guys in the end. Yang Yi overestimated the hunters' ability. They spent 1 day and 2 nights to find them. On the morning of the 3rd day, a black SUV stopped outside the Mo family's farm. Private property couldn't be trespassed, not to mention that they were discovered by a few groups of people the moment they entered. They looked at them cautiously, and also notified Mo Henian's family. After a while, 2 strong-looking men wearing sunglasses got out of the car. However, just as they approached, Greg and a hunting dog strolled in front of them. Hey, gentlemen, You should know that trespassing on private property or peeping on private property will get you shot, right? Sorry, we just want to talk. The other party took out his empty hands to show that he was not a threat. He pressed down and comforted them. Not long after, Yang Yi walked out with a calm smile. He looked at the other party for a while and said slowly, "Are you from the military?" Yang Yi's ability to hide his strength was much better than theirs. They couldn't sense the threat from Yang Yi at all. One of them even said proudly, "Yes, a retired Marine." Wasn't he just an American Special Forces soldier? He wasn't even from the strongest unit. Yang Yi just nodded lightly to them and said, "The two people you are looking for are not here." They were a little surprised by Yang Yi's straightforwardness. This also saved them the time to think of a way to get Yang Yi to talk. They looked at each other and asked, "What do you mean? Where did they go?" "I don't know where they went. I only know that they are being tracked by you." Yang Yi shrugged and said, "I told them that you would definitely find me here. My farm here isn't safe, so I dropped them off on the way and they went to intercept other hitchhikers. Only God knows where they went." The two people's expressions became serious. They couldn't tell if Yang Yi was telling the truth. They felt that it was true, but they didn't want to believe it. Of course, they tried to ask Yang Yi a few questions, but Yang Yi answered them all without leaving any gaps. The little psychological games they played didn't work. After a while, the black SUV drove away. "Who is this Yang? Why do I feel like he's playing us?" The driver couldn't help but ask the headquarters. "From the information here, it says that he's a Chinese celebrity. So is his wife. Before he became a celebrity, he was a soldier, an ordinary soldier." The head of the headquarters also felt a little strange. He carefully reviewed Yang Yi's information again, and suddenly laughed. The scriptwriter of Prison Break. "Oh my God, what kind of opponent did we meet? No wonder he's so smart." The corner of the director's mouth curled up. He felt that it didn't matter if the fugitives were caught or not. In this segment, Yang Yi's unexpected intrusion would raise the level of the show's excitement by several levels. It would even make the show's effect explode. The conversation was still going on. "Do you think he's telling the truth? Is Jie Man and the others really not at the farm?" "I think it's more likely that he's telling the truth. He knows the risks, and as he said, he reminded Jie Man and the others to continue running. He won't let Jie Man and the others stay, so he's telling us the truth. Even if we know the truth, we won't be able to find out anything," an analyst said. With that, the tracking of Jie Man and Hill became bogged down. Chapter 8:12. Time passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, it was already mid-August in Yang Yi's family's colorful life on the farm. Although Yang Yi basically did not help them anymore, Germain and Hill still won the cat and mouse game at the end of July with their wits. It was worth mentioning that Germain really asked a pilot friend of his to fly his wife to Colorado in a small plane. After that, he took Doug's car and rushed to Colorado to meet his wife. He even took a picture and uploaded it to the American version of Facebook to mock the hunters. However, when the hunters tracked them to Great Prairie City again, Germain and Hill had already escaped. They started the next step of their escape journey in Colorado. Of course, this was just a small episode in their lives. Yang Yi and the children were on vacation at his father-in-law's house. The main theme was still family. During the day, Yang Yi followed Mo Hinian out to work. Like a cowboy, he drove the hundreds of Angus cattle to graze on the grassland. At night, he accompanied his father-in-law to sit in the courtyard under the starry sky and enjoy the shade while listening to his father-in-law boast about the legendary stories when he was young. Naturally, their relationship improved by leaps and bounds. In just a month, Mo Hinian's attitude towards him finally changed from being cold on the outside, but warm on the inside. He was even a little unwilling to express his approval. Now they were no longer estranged. They were even close to each other like two brothers. They could even put their arms around each other's shoulders and swear that they would beat up a small cow kindergarten and trample on a grassland nursing home together. Shishi and Tong Tong both improved. Shishi's improvement was more obvious. The little girl was busy taking care of her little deer, Little White, and her pony on the farm every day. In the boring work of cleaning the stables and deer pens every day, the little girl who only knew how to act coquettishly with her father now knew how to take care of others. One day, Yang Ian and Mohinian came back from outside with sweat all over their foreheads. The little girl actually ran to the fridge spontaneously, took 2 bottles of water, and happily ran over to her father and grandfather to drink. Tong Tong's progress was slower. After Murphy and Yang Yi's hard work, he finally learned how to pronounce the word mama. To Yang Yi's surprise, Shishi had somehow taught Tong Tong how to call her sister. Although Tong Tong's pronunciation sounded more like jia jia or tisk tsk, Shishi still felt a sense of accomplishment. She was more than happy to teach Tong Tong other pronunciations. In Yang Yi's absence for more than a month, the domestic entertainment industry was not calm at all. After all, the entertainment industry was the entertainment industry. Without some gossip and juicy news, how could those celebrities who couldn't produce good works maintain their popularity? However, the storm this time wasn't some celebrity's self-promotion. Instead, it was a war that shocked the industry. At first, it was just a rumor about Yi Qing and Chao Tsong-Tsong. The media exposed that Yi Qing entered Chao Tsong-Tsong's hotel room in the middle of the night, before the recording of the New Zealand leg of the travel challenge. The news was half hidden, but what else could a hot-blooded man do in a woman's room in the middle of the night? Yi Qing's fans angrily attacked Chao Tsong-Tsong's micro-broadcasting, calling her a slut who used her good looks to seduce their favorite celebrity. And Chao Tsong-Tsong's own fans also changed sides. Chao Tsong-Tsong was an idol singer. Her beautiful appearance, hot body, and elegant fantasy were her selling points. It could be said that her personal image was more important than anything else. When this rumor spread, many glass-hearted fans' hearts were shattered. While they were condemning Yi Qing, they were also greatly disappointed with Chao Tsong-Tsong. This was clearly a publicity stunt set up by the program. The premiere of the travel challenge was only 2 weeks later. With this kind of rumor, they naturally gained a lot of attention. But no one knew that Chao Tsong-Tsong didn't know anything about this publicity stunt. It was the company behind her. To be exact, it was Li Manman who arranged it in private with Xingyao for her own benefit. Li Manman wouldn't care about the life and death of a small idol. But Li Manman didn't think that the normally submissive Chao Tsong-Tsong would have such a strong reaction this time. 2 days after the scandal was exposed, Chao Tsong-Tsong clarified on her micro-broadcasting. On one hand, she said that she didn't know why Yi Qing suddenly came to her room. Her manager was also in her room, and Yi Qing left in less than 2 minutes. However, the reporter's news was taken out of context, and the surveillance footage was missing the latter part. On the other hand, Chao Tsong-Tsong exposed the screenshots of her and Li Manman's text messages, completely revealing that this rumor was a farce set up by the program. I am very disappointed with the program Travel Challenge, and will withdraw from this program indefinitely. Here, I want to apologize to the other friends and staff who have helped me. Chao Tsong-Tsong showed an unexpected courage. Of course, Li Manman wouldn't sit still. She teamed up with Xingyao, and took out some of the highlights during the program's recording. She pieced them together and edited them into Chao Tsong-Tsong's black material. She exposed to the media that Chao Tsong-Tsong disobeyed the arrangement as an idol during the program's recording, ordered the male guests to work for her, and other bad attitudes. Of course, there were a lot of misunderstandings in the edited content. Not to mention, the program's scriptwriter had arranged such a character for Chao Tsong-Tsong from the beginning. The script wanted Chao Tsong-Tsong to act like a big shot, but she didn't want to act like this. However, the media, who had been paid, turned a blind eye and helped her to tear Chao Tsong-Tsong apart. It's a pity that Chao Tsong-Tsong has withdrawn from the program. The 2 previously recorded episodes will still be broadcast as usual. We will find someone to fill in for the future episodes. But fans, please rest assured that the guests we've selected this time will not be as delicate as Chao Tsong-Tsong and ruin the program's effect. Luo Jinting added insult to injury at the press conference. Chao Tsong-Tsong and the program's hard fight with her own company obviously didn't end well. She still had more than 2 years left on her contract. Li Manman, who was angry out of humiliation, asked the man behind her to completely hide Chao Tsong-Tsong. All of her announcements, performance plans, and record plans were all stopped. The war ended because Chao Tsung-tsung was controlled. Chao Tsung-tsung, who was hidden, also temporarily disappeared from the public's sight. Lee Man-man still needed more support from the public to protect her image that had been affected by this storm. However, for her and the program team of Travel Challenge, this storm was a victory. They successfully gained a lot of attention. The melodramatic drama in the domestic entertainment industry didn't seem to affect Yang Yi for the time being. However, when some of the meddlesome media compared Yang Yi and Chao Tsung-tsung, who had participated in similar reality shows, they bragged about Yang Yi. It turns out that in the entertainment industry, there's still a big tree to rely on. Yang Yi, who was the big tree, was preparing to bring Murphy and Shishi to California. They were going to record the famous Prada talk show. This was their last stop in the United States. It was worth mentioning that this time, because Yang Yi's entire family had appeared on the show in the popular video, Yang Yi wasn't the only one on the show. His entire family was on the show together. Even Shishi would have an interesting talent show this time. Chapter 8:13. Their trip to California was different from the last time when they had to rush to his father-in-law's house. This time, Yang Yi's schedule was much more relaxed. They flew over 2 days in advance. Yang Yi arranged for them to go to Berkeley first. The American branch of the Backwave Technology Company was located there. As the big boss, he had to check it out since he was in the United States. Of course, he also had to meet Mao Peifu, whom he had sent to the United States and entrusted with an important task. Mao Peifu had grown rapidly in the past few years. She had already shown her ability to take charge of things in China. After selling the Chinese version of Facebook last year, she was sent by Yang Yi to the United States to set up the American branch of the Backwave Technology Company. She was to be in charge of operating the overseas version of Facebook, as mentioned earlier. This was a very difficult task. Everything had to start from scratch. However, Mao Peifu did a great job. She was in charge of human resources in China. This gave her a wealth of experience in human resources. The American branch was quickly set up. The members were all recruited from California. Not only were there a large number of Chinese computer geniuses, but there were also young university students of different skin colors. They were full of vitality and had a deep understanding of different ethnic groups. They knew how to cater to their needs. In terms of the operation of Facebook, she had a multi-pronged approach. She had a wide range of social activities among the university students, young intellectuals, and white-collar workers in the United States. She had even used the ice bucket challenge strategy that Yang Yi had taught her. In just a few months, this social network had become popular all over the United States. This was also why when Yang Yi's video became popular, many people reposted and commented on it on their own Facebook. This was also why in the undercover tracking program, there were scenes where the hunters used Facebook to track down those people's social networks. Of course, Germain had also used Facebook to post photos to fight back against the hunters. Yang Yi naturally gave Mao Peifu a generous reward for her achievements. Not only did he give her the equity reward that he had promised previously, but he also gave the shares of the American branch to Mao Peifu. Of course, when Yang Yi met Mao Peifu this time, other than inspecting the U.S. branch, he also had another mission for her. This is the era of the mobile internet. Smartphones have almost taken over the market share of feature phones. We need to take advantage of the fact that this market hasn't been fully formed, and seize the instant messaging port of people's smart terminals. Yang Yi said to Mao Peifu, "I'm referring to the mobile version of SNS. Are we finally going to compete with SNS?" Mao Peifu wasn't shocked but rather happy. SNS was this world's QQ. It had already dominated the domestic instant messaging market for many years. In the domestic internet industry, he was also a giant. Backwave Technology Company that had only been established for less than 3 years was still a very weak sheep in front of SNS. Even if you compare Sahara Online Mall with SNS, the value of Sahara Online Mall that wasn't even listed yet couldn't compare to SNS that was already listed. One had to know that SNS had spent $800 million last year to buy the domestic version of Facebook, linking it with SNS. But in the end, the limelight had been stolen by Weibo, which had become very popular this year. SNS had spent $800 million to make a splash, but to them, it didn't hurt at all. Previously, SNS had been ambitious and wanted to swallow up Backwave. It was just that Yang Yi wasn't moved by the price they offered. That's right. We're going to compete with SNS. But when I said we're going to make a mobile version of SNS, I didn't mean to copy SNS model to make a mobile app. We need to have our own innovation and focus, Yang Yi said. If we copy SNS, we'll be sued for plagiarism, Mao Peifu smiled. I understand. Then what do we need to do? Yang Yi started talking to Mao Peifu. Our app's initial focus is on voice chat. It's similar to text chat. People can send voice messages to convey their message. Of course, you can also send text messages if you want to. Yang Yi didn't really remember how the app was initially designed. He only told Mao Peifu about the functions of the app from his memory, including the emoji packs and the emoji store. He even drew out the interface so that Mao Peifu could arrange for people to design it. Your app's main focus is on private communication. Compared to micro-broadcasting and SNS, it focuses more on personal privacy, right? Mao Peifu heard Yang Yi talk about some of the functions and limitations of the friend circle. She immediately understood what was different about it. That's right. It focuses more on personal communication, so it requires a phone number to register, Yang Yi said. Also, I hope that this app can be released as soon as possible. Also, to cater for the upcoming new year, we'll add in the red packet function. Yang Yi had already thought of many ways to advertise the app. Not only did it include the red packet attack at the end of the year, the new red packet concept for the new year, and the advertisement for the Spring Festival Gala. He also planned to let the people at China Star Productions add a large amount of advertisements for the app in the second season of the Limit Challenge. Mao Peifu took notes seriously. She asked curiously, "You already have the whole idea for the app. Why do you want to make it in the American branch? The people in the country have the technology to make it too. We need to avoid SNS eyes and ears," Yang Yi said. Although Backwave Technology Company couldn't compare to SNS, SNS didn't dare to underestimate the micro-broadcasting company. After the failed merger, SNS increased their surveillance of Backwave Technology Company. Yang Yi didn't even know if anyone in the company had been bribed by SNS. But the classic tactic of corporate espionage definitely existed. Who knows, their R&D department might have accidentally hired a technician purposely sent by SNS. Yang Yi wanted to compete with SNS. This plan had to be carried out secretly. If SNS caught wind of this, they would have set up the mobile instant messaging app early on and made preparations to snipe them. In the future, with Backwave's strength and experience in the instant messaging industry, it would be difficult for them to grab too much market share under their watch. So this project had to be carried out overseas. I understand. Mao Peifu nodded. Once this project is done, you'll be in charge of it when you return. Yang Yi gave Mao Peifu an important task. This is what you're looking forward to, a direct confrontation with SNS. Mao Peifu's fighting spirit was ignited. She looked at Yang Yi excitedly. "Boss, what's the name of our project? Weibo, WeChat, or Weibo?" Mao Peifu was just guessing based on the naming pattern of micro-broadcasting. Yang Yi didn't think that she would get it right. "Let's call it WeChat. It's in the same vein as micro-broadcasting." Yang Yi laughed. "The English name will be WeChat. Don't forget, we'll take over the overseas market as well." Chapter 8:14. Prada's talk show was the most popular talk show in the United States. It had been in production for more than 20 years since its debut in the late 1980s. However, its influence did not diminish. It was like aged wine, getting better and better with each passing day. Until now, its viewership ratings were still the highest among all talk shows. However, to be honest, it was not difficult to get on such a popular show. That was because it was a daily talk show. Although it was not necessarily recorded every day, it was indeed broadcast every day. The format of the show was flexible and varied. It could invite experts to discuss social hot issues, or invite celebrities or ordinary people who had received attention for an interview to talk about their lives, work, and even their unconstrained ideas. A daily show meant that Ms. Prada had to invite a large number of guests to participate in her talk show. It was impossible for her program team to take the initiative to invite all of them, and the individual applications were too complicated. It would take a lot of effort to filter them out. At this time, the recommendation of a senior agent like Wilson, who had a wide range of connections, was very important. You have a story, I have wine. As long as you have a story or have amazing skills, as long as you are a celebrity or an ordinary person, regardless of whether you are a politician or an assembly line worker, Prada would welcome them on the show to show their charm to the audience. Calm down. This show is very open. There won't be any problems if you express your thoughts boldly. Ms. Prada is a very nice person. She can control the rhythm very well, and won't let the show get out of control. The main thing is to show your true self. The audience also likes the sincerity of the guests, but you can't be too sincere. Some sensitive things can't be said, you know. In the lounge next to the recording hall of SBC, Wilson was explaining nervously to young Ian Murphy. After a while, he reacted and scratched his head embarrassedly. Sorry, boss. I forgot that you are both celebrities who have been famous for a long time. You have also appeared on talk shows in China. I've seen your shows, but I still treated you as newbies. I'm really sorry for being so long-winded. Wilson had done a lot of homework before. He had watched all the variety shows that young Ian Murphy had appeared on in China, especially the interview show, Jixin Interview. Young Yi did not mind. He smiled and patted Wilson's shoulder. No, Wilson, we have to thank you. In the United States, we are really just newbies. The experience you told us is very useful. Papa, what are sensitive things? She asked curiously. Seeing that her father and Uncle Wilson had finished talking, she tugged at her father's sleeve. She was also recording today. As she had to dance, the little girl could not wear a skirt. However, under her grandmother's guidance, the little girl was dressed simply and fashionably, but she was exceptionally bright and cute. She was wearing a black slim-fit short-sleeved t-shirt. Although the t-shirt had a black background, it was not too stiff. There was a bright and cute deer print on the front. The print was a cartoon deer jumping up and pouncing on the pink peach blossoms on a tree. Against the black background, it looked particularly vivid and cute. She was wearing a pair of light blue, high-quality denim casual pants. There were 3 British pleats in the pockets, which were very attractive visually. The pants were finished at the bottom. Coupled with the characteristic of the pants, it showed Shishi's slender calves. The combination of the black shirt and blue pants was very simple and very popular. However, on Shishi, who had a slender figure and long legs compared to other children her age, it did not look popular at all. Instead, it gave people a sense of impact as if she was a young model. Of course, the finishing touch was the pair of cute sneakers on Shishi's feet. The bright pink background was complemented by white uppers and tongues. There were thick black edges at the heels and shoelaces, which were supplemented by small green rectangles. The overall color of the shoes was bright and lively. After Shishi put them on, it showed her liveliness and cuteness even more. When Mo Shawan saw it, she was full of praise. Our Shishi has grown up. Now she's a beautiful and handsome little beauty. Who knows how many little boys will fall for her when she goes out? Of course, Shishi was still that ignorant and curious little girl. She still had 100,000 whys. Now she could not hold back her curiosity and asked her father about it. Yang Yi patted his daughter's little head and said with a smile, "Sensitive words refer to things that you say that might hurt others or make them unhappy. On TV, we have to face all kinds of audiences, so these words cannot be said." Shishi shook her head in confusion. This explanation was too abstract for her to understand. Yang Yi looked around. There were no cameras around, and no one was eavesdropping. He explained to Shishi in Chinese. For example, some people don't like black people from the bottom of their hearts. They think that they are all bad people. If these words are said, it will make their black friends unhappy and hurt them. These words cannot be said. But I like Greg. Greg is black, but he's very nice. Last time, he even gave me a very beautiful bird's egg. Shishi said in confusion. Greg. That naughty kid loves to steal birds' eggs when he grows up. Yang Yi did not delve into it. He said with a smile, "There are many strange people in this world. There will always be people with unique ideas. We just have to be ourselves, don't you think so?" Shishi was still a little confused, but she still nodded obediently. The recording of the show began. Mo Shawan stayed in the lounge to help look after Tong Tong, while Yang Yi, Murphy, and Shishi went backstage. Prada, a well-respected black lady, had already walked onto the stage to receive the cheers of the audience. These were all real audience members. There were always many audience members who liked to watch the show live rather than on TV. Moreover, it was said that the ticket sales were a considerable source of income for Prada's talk show. Yang Yi listened to the cheers backstage. He estimated that there were 200 to 300 people in his mind. The opening was a little old-fashioned. It was introduced from the video. Prada invited Yang Yi and his family to come on stage. This was a big surprise for the audience who did not know anything. Although they did not know Yang Yi and his family, many of them had heard of this song and liked it. The loud cheers made Shishi a little nervous. When her father held her hand to go on stage, the little girl snuggled close to him. However, she still could not suppress her curiosity. She secretly poked her little head out to look at the audience. There are so many people. The little girl thought to herself. There are more people than when we perform. However, Mom's concert has more people. What a cute girl. After taking her seat on the stage, Prada looked at Cece, who was sitting between her parents, with a smile. She didn't know if she felt that Cece was too nervous and deliberately enlightened her, or if there was some other reason, but Prada greeted Cece first. Shishi blinked. She looked at her father first and said shyly in a low voice, "Thank you, Madam." "You can call me Madam Prada." "Then what's your name?" Prada asked kindly. "My name is Yangshi. You can call me Cece." After Shishi opened her mouth, she became bolder. "Cece. This name is a little special. This is the first time I've heard it. Does it have any special meaning in Chinese?" Prada asked with a smile. This was a test for Cece. The little girl thought hard and finally thought of a word that could be explained. "It means sunrise, sunrise dawn." Prada looked at Shishi with some surprise. She did not think that Shishi could answer such a complicated question. After all, according to the information, Shishi was Chinese. She could not help but praise. "Your English is really good." Really? Shishi was praised by a foreigner. Moreover, it was a foreigner who looked a little like a teacher. She responded with some joy. Prada was stunned for a moment. She smiled and said, "Yes, you can tell others that Madame Prada said that my English is very good." The audience could not help but laugh kindly. Chapter 8:15. Prada teased Shishi, trying to make the little girl, who was a little nervous when she went on the stage, relax. However, she didn't know what kind of existence she had just teased. Cece blinked her eyes. After the laughter of the audience subsided, she asked softly, "Miss Prada, are you a teacher?" "No. Why do you ask this question?" Prada was about to shift the topic back to Yang Yi, the protagonist, but Shishi's question forced her to respond. "Because I think you're super nice, just like my teacher," Shishi said. Prada turned her head and looked at the audience and the camera, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Then, she looked back at Shishi and said seriously, "I'm really honored to be praised by you. I think your teacher must be a great person because you learned English from her." "Hee, she's a great person. I'm talking about her because my teacher is a lady. My 3 teachers are all ladies," Shishi said with a smile. "Well, I think you should use them, but it's okay." Prada was about to change the topic. However, Cece still wanted to continue and said, "But I didn't learn all my English from the teachers. I also learned it from my papa, my friend Lu Weisha, and many others." There was a burst of laughter from the audience. The audience could see that Prada couldn't take it in front of Shishi. Prada finally understood that some children didn't need to be coaxed by her. They were adaptable. Moreover, they were too adaptable. "Okay, now let's talk about your father. Mr. Yang, I'm very curious. Your family members are all Chinese. How can you speak English so fluently?" Prada finally seized the opportunity to change the subject of the interview. The conversation between Prada, Yang Yi and Murphy went very smoothly. Since Yang Yi and Murphy were not as talkative as Shi, Prada was able to grasp the rhythm of the conversation very well, throwing out one burden after another. After Prada's inquiry, the audience found out that Yang Yi, the creator of I'm Yours, was not just a singer and songwriter. He was also a writer who had published many fairy tales and novels, including Prison Break, which had been adapted into an American TV series. He had also designed the most popular reality show in China. Oh my God, this guy is even stronger than me. If I hadn't asked someone to confirm it, I wouldn't have believed it. Prada pretended to be surprised and widened her eyes as she said to the audience, I think he's more suitable for Prada's talk show than I am. Hearing Prada's self-ridicule, the audience could not help but laugh. Wait a minute, Yang. I want to ask you, how old are you? Prada asked. 34. Yang Yi celebrated his birthday a little earlier than Shi. Oh my God. When I was 34. Okay, I'm already very famous. This talk show started when I was 32. Prada originally wanted to belittle herself and elevate Yang Yi, but when she realized that she was also a legend, she laughed awkwardly and politely. The audience who were familiar with Prada laughed. They knew that when Prada was in her early 30s, she had already become the queen of talk shows in the hearts of the audience. But you're really amazing. At least until now, I haven't published a book, but you've already published countless books. Prada said humorously. It seems like I'm the one who published a book earlier in the show. Among the people who published a book, I'm the one who's more successful in the show. Yang Yi did not have a sense of humor, but at that moment, he used a joke that was more popular in his previous life. For a moment, it felt like a string of witty remarks. Of course, Yang Yi still wanted to focus on introducing Murphy. That was the main purpose of his appearance on the show. In the previous show, Prada and the audience learned that Murphy grew up in the United States. Moreover, her family had emigrated to the United States. Her father even owned a farm. That made the audience's impression of Murphy become much more intimate. Yang said that you're a singer. Can you describe how famous you are in China? Prada asked. Murphy pondered for a moment, then said, I'm a singer. I've held concerts before. My best album was produced by my husband last year. So far, it has sold more than 50 million copies, which is equivalent to 2 multi-platinum albums. On China's social media sites, I have more than 10 million fans. Murphy was very honest. She spoke the truth, but the effect was also very good. Even in the US, the data that she had shown them was impressive. A record that has sold more than 50 million copies. Prada was shocked. I don't know how good that is in China, but in the United States, it's at least in the top 50. Moreover, that chart is historical data. Your record has only been released for more than a year. It has unlimited potential to be ranked higher. Record sales don't mean anything. Murphy's excellence lies in her singing. Her voice has a very unique charm. She can easily control both high and low notes. Yang Yi explained. Moreover, I have to say that Murphy is the person who guided me on the path of music. In the past, I didn't have a deep interest in music. It was because of her that I fell in love with music. I also realized that I have a little talent in it. Really? Prada asked in surprise. Murphy, Yang said that he became a singer because of you? He's a little humble. In fact, he's very talented. Murphy explained seriously. Yang Yi is a very amazing person. I've never seen another person better than him in my life. He wrote a lot of wonderful songs. I bought more than 50 million copies of the record, and all the songs in it were written by him. It can be said that without him, I wouldn't be able to achieve what I have now. I'm a little confused by what you're saying. Prada spread her hands. Yang Yi and Murphy looked at each other warmly, then smiled and said to Prada, You can imagine that Murphy is a diamond hidden in the crowd. The things that I did helped her stand out and become more dazzling. But I'm not wrong. I learned to sing from her. You saw that I sang well in the video just now, but in fact, this is the result of learning from her. My wife sings better. Yang Yi said. Yang Yi was really not flattering Murphy. In terms of singing, Murphy was indeed better than Yang Yi. Even though Yang Yi's voice was also very good, in terms of singing, Yang did not practice as much as Murphy did. Naturally, he was left behind by Murphy. Prada looked at the audience with a smile and said, "I think this needs a song to prove it. Don't you think so?" Yes. The audience was very cooperative, and they all applauded and shouted. Yang and the others were very calm because for this show, he and Murphy had already prepared for it. They even practiced several songs, although in the end, they decided to choose a song that could better reflect Murphy's strength and somewhat subvert the audience's views. If they always sang love songs, it would be easy to limit their singing path. "I heard that you also brought a new song this time." Prada looked back and said with a smile, "It seems that you're not singing this time, right?" "Yes, a new song. Although I'm not singing, I'll help with the accompaniment." Yang gently patted Shishi's shoulder and said with a smile, "Miss Prada, I'm afraid I'll have to ask you to help take care of my daughter." Prada laughed. "I'm honored and willing." To be honest, although Shishi was a little talkative, Prada still felt that the conversation with Shishi was more interesting in this talk show. Chapter 8:16. Yang and Murphy went backstage to prepare. On the sofa in the middle of the stage, Shishi was sitting face to face with Miss Prada. The little girl was not as reserved as she was when she first arrived. She sat on the sofa, and her big obsidian-like eyes were lively. Like an ordinary child, her attention was drifting. She looked away for a while, then back to Prada. "Okay, let's talk about something." Prada looked at the camera and pretended to be helpless. "Sisi, how about we talk about you?" "Okay." Shishi happily shook her little butt on the sofa. "How old are you this year?" Prada tried to find an angle to cut into the topic. "I'm 6 years old." It was not Shishi's style to answer the question so simply. She paused and said, "I was only 5 years old, but I became 6 years old after my birthday last month." "Your birthday? In the United States?" Prada asked with a smile. "How did you feel about your birthday in the United States?" She actually wanted to ask about the difference between Shishi's birthday in China and the United States, but how could Shishi understand the deeper meaning? Shishi thought about what happened on her birthday and smiled. "I was so happy, Miss Prada. I want to tell you. My papa gave me a fawn, and I named it Hua Hua. It means fresh flowers." "Really? Your birthday present is a fawn? A real fawn? Or is it the kind of toy I'm thinking of?" Prada asked with some surprise. "It's real, and it's so beautiful. But it's also very pitiful. It lost Papa and Mom, and then it was bitten by a big bad wolf. But Ms. Prada, don't worry. Papa and I took it to the vet, and Grandpa Lister has already cured it," Shishi said happily. The audience applauded with appreciation. "I understand. You said that you saved a fawn that was bitten by a wolf, right?" Prada asked. "Yes, my papa let it live next to Little White. Then Miss Prada, I clean the room for it every day. It's just that I won't be at home these few days, so Greg will help me clean it. Hua Hua likes him too." Sisi started talking, and a series of messages popped out. "Wait a minute, what's Little White? Another fawn?" Prada found herself at a loss for words. The audience laughed. "No, Little White is a pony my grandfather gave me. It's super cute," Shishi said regretfully, "but I don't have their photos, or I could show them to you." "Thank you, child." Prada didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He pretended to sigh and said, "Now we know that you have a pony and a deer as pets. God, your experience is really extraordinary. There are not many children who have a pony and a deer as pets." "They're not my pets." Shishi, on the other hand, understood the concept of the word. She blinked and explained to Prada seriously, "Hua Hua and Xiaobai are my friends." "Okay. Friend, I'm glad to hear that." Prada gave a thumbs up. Then Papa said that after we go back to China, Grandpa will let Hua Hua go back to the forest because that's her home. She can also find her mom there. She said sincerely. "That's great, your idea is great. I think Hua Hua will definitely find her mother." Prada finally reevaluated her opinion of Shishi. She felt that Shishi was not only a child, but also a very kind person. She praised, "Sisi, you're a good child. Really, I like your love for animals. Hey, I want to hug you. Can I hug you?" Prada opened her arms lovingly. She blinked her big eyes. Although she could not understand why Prada suddenly wanted to hug her, she actually liked this gentle and kind black lady. She smiled sweetly and went into her arms. Prada hugged the little girl gently. After letting go, she said softly, "Cece, you have a kind heart. Please always remember to be sincere to people and to the world, okay?" She looked into Prada's eyes and nodded her little head in confusion. "Okay, let's enjoy your mother's singing and your father's performance together." Prada had been doing shows for decades and had a good grasp of the rhythm. She smiled and pulled Shishi to sit on the sofa on her side. She then pointed to the small stage next to them. The curtains of the small stage were pulled open. Yongyi sat in front of a piano, while Murphy lowered her head slightly and held the microphone and the piano with both hands. Before the curtains were completely pulled open, neither of them moved. It was as if they were frozen in time. There was already some applause from the audience. When an expert made a move, it was obvious whether he was good or not. Although Murphy had not sung live for a long time, when she stood on the stage, even if her head was lowered, she gave off a deep aura that controlled the whole scene. The audience could not help but look forward to it. In contrast, Yongyi was much more low-key. He seemed to be hiding behind the scenes, giving all the light to Murphy. Murphy would not let him down. When the curtains were completely pulled open, Yongyi raised his hand and started to play. The prelude was only a few seconds, and it was a single note that could firmly affect people's hearts. It was like a melodious bell, knocking on people's eardrums. Then Murphy raised her head. Her eyes were calm. She opened her mouth and sang, "Shine Like a Diamond." Mo-Fei's soulful and ethereal singing immediately made everyone's attention. The camera switched to Prada, who was on the other side of the sofa, and her face was full of surprise. This was not an act. It was Prada's first time hearing Murphy sing. However, she had been in the entertainment industry for so many years. She could completely judge that Murphy's voice was very recognizable, and that this song contained a myriad of changes, so she could not help but show a surprised expression. This was just the beginning. Found_like_in_the_beautiful_C. I_kiss_to_be_happy. You_and_I. You_and_I. Or _like_diamonds_in_the_sky. As if I'd found a lighthouse in the middle of the sea. I choose to live a happy life. Just you and me. You and me. We're like diamonds in the sky. It was completely different from the first two lines. Although Yongyi was still accompanied by a single note, Murphy's voice was like a gentle breeze in the early morning. It was as if she was soaring on the clouds in the boundless sky. The light and powerful voice was full of rhythm, and people could not help but be intoxicated. Just like the unconstrained imagery and artistic conception given by the lyrics, people's thoughts seemed to be brought to the sky by Murphy's voice. At that moment, the enthusiasm of the audience was ignited. Although they did not make a sound to affect Murphy's singing, everyone stared at the inconspicuous Chinese on the stage. All their attention was attracted by her peerless voice. Where did this person come from? Perhaps it was because they were ignorant of other countries, or perhaps it was because they subconsciously looked down on Asians. When Prada mentioned the sales of Murphy's records, they did not think much of it. But now, they seemed to have forgotten their previous prejudice and previous memories. There was only one thought in their minds. Where did Prada find this person? She was singing like a superstar. As the lyrics said, shining like a diamond. The usually inconspicuous, Murphy was like a diamond standing on the stage. No one could ignore her brilliance. Not to mention the audience. Even Prada herself was stunned by Murphy's series of effortless high notes. Especially in the last part of the song. I saw the life inside your eyes, and the first few verses. Mo-Fei sang the high notes here very well. The audience could not tell the difference because Murphy sang very freely, and did not seem to use any effort at all. Maybe they just thought that the high notes here were very nice, and Mo-Fei singing also had a little natural flirtation, which made people feel intoxicated listening to it. But Prada knew music. She knew that if it were an ordinary singer here, they would probably not be able to hang on, let alone sing so many high notes. Murphy was able to control them so freely. It was as if she was the high notes themselves. Even that lingering aura was definitely not something an ordinary singer could compare to. No wonder Yang Yi said that his wife's singing was much better than his. Prada finally understood that Murphy's singing was at the level of a monster. Chapter 8:17. After the song Diamonds was sung, the 200 to 300 audience members who were impressed by Murphy's singing started applauding. Even Prada could not help but stand up and applaud Murphy. She knew better than the audience how capable Murphy was. She also stood up happily when she saw that. She stood beside Prada and clapped her little hands excitedly. She could understand the meaning of everyone's applause, so the little girl was also proud of her mother. In contrast, Murphy's reaction was calmer. She had received countless praises like that. It was only because she had been away from the stage for too long. Apart from the small test of Jixin interview, Murphy had not enjoyed a real stage for more than a year. Now that she had sung a song, it was considered satisfying. When Murphy and Yang Yi walked down the stage hand in hand, the corners of her mouth were still filled with a joyful smile. Back to the interview, Prada chatted a lot with Murphy. She was full of praises and asked about Murphy's future development plans. Will you choose to develop in the United States in the future? I have to say, with the quality of your song just now, there will be countless agencies that want to recruit you, Prada said. Murphy and Yang Yi had discussed this issue before. She said calmly. In fact, there won't be much difference between the past and the future. We'll still stay in China, but Yang Yi has already recruited a group of agents in the United States to help arrange some of our music releases and other work in the United States. So even if we stay in China, we'll strive to compose and sing more good English songs. We won't disappoint our fans. Prada felt a little regretful. However, with her rich experience, she could tell that the couple were not ordinary small-time artists. Not only were they talented, but they were also very rich. Their choice could not be measured from the perspective of ordinary people. Prada was a person who knew how to chat and listen well. As the show progressed, Prada used the opportunity to guide Yang Yi and Murphy to explain the situation of the Chinese entertainment industry to many curious American audiences. Of course, Yang Yi and Murphy also chose the good things to talk about. The audience listened with great interest. They were usually unwilling to understand the development of other countries, but it was an eye-opener for them. They realized that there were other worlds that were as exciting as them outside the United States. Before the talk show ended, Prada still led the topic back to Xixi. From her father, she learned that Xixi was not only a smart and cute girl, but she was also a good little actress. Is this true? You've played many interesting roles? Prada asked in surprise. It's true. Xixi had been holding back for a long time. She could finally not just sit between her parents and act as a cute mascot. The little girl happily told Ms. Prada about the role she had played. I played a girl who didn't like to talk. You played a girl who didn't like to talk? Prada asked solemnly. She even looked at the audience and the camera with a blank face. The audience laughed. They all knew how talkative Xixi was. She did not seem like an introverted child at all. Yes. She didn't know how to laugh or talk, but she was also a good child. She was very obedient and would protect the injured adult. Xixi tried her best to explain to Prada, that adult was played by my papa. The audience laughed even louder. Yang Yi smiled helplessly at the side. He touched Xixi's little head lovingly and explained to Prada, Xixi is right. The character she played at that time had a certain degree of autism. I believe you must have played her very well, because you are also very kind. Prada smiled and said to Xixi, what other roles have you played? There was also an ugly duckling. The other small animals didn't like it, Xixi said. An ugly duckling? Prada was confused again. Why was she playing an animal again? This is not a movie, but a play she acted in, Yang Yi explained. Xixi looked at her father. As if she had received a hint. She nodded her little head seriously and said, yes, this is a play. I acted in it with many of my classmates. Xixi also told Prada the story of the ugly duckling very enthusiastically. She even dragged Prada and told her that in the end, the ugly duckling turned into a white swan. Fortunately, Prada was very patient and cooperated with her to express her surprise and surprise. This made Shishi very happy, and she felt that she had shared her happiness with Prada. I also acted as a dancing pig. Shishi was still a little unsatisfied. Prada smiled. She found an opportunity and said to Shishi, I heard from your parents that you are also a good dancer. And you came today to teach me how to dance, right? Shishi was a little embarrassed at this time. She twisted her little body, hugged her father's hand and nodded shyly. Before she came, her parents told her that she was going to show a dance that she had learned in her mother's dance studio. Shishi, who had a strong desire to perform, agreed readily. However, now that there were so many people in the audience, the little girl was a little nervous. Talking was one thing, dancing was another. After all, Shishi was a child. Dancing in front of so many strangers, Shishi would still be nervous. Just like when she acted as the ugly duckling and the pig. Are you shy? This is a little surprising to me. But don't be shy. Auntie Prada will dance with you. You see, my dance is so bad. Everyone will give me a warm round of applause. Prada stood up with a smile and did a dance that was not like her. Prada, who was in her 50s, was naturally out of shape, but she did not care about her comical appearance at all. She deliberately did this to ease Shishi's nervousness. The audience laughed and gave a warm round of applause very cooperatively. Miss Prada, you didn't dance badly. Don't think like that. My papa said that if you work hard, you will be great. When Shishi heard Prada say that she had chosen poorly, she was worried that Prada would not dare to dance again. When Prada came over, the little girl stood up and took her hand, comforting her softly. Prada hugged Shishi and said with a smile, Thank you. Baby, this is the best encouragement I have ever heard. Okay, let's dance. Prada asked people to remove the sofa. Young-yi and Murphy stood aside. She clapped her hands and said to Shishi enthusiastically, Baby, do you want to teach me how to dance first? Or do you want to show us first? Her nervousness was relieved. Shishi blinked. She did not know how to choose, but she liked to follow the pattern that her father had taught her and her mother. Then I want to demonstrate it first. Is that okay? Ms. Prada, of course. Please ask the sound engineer to play the music. This is the dance music that your father made himself. Prada could not help but exclaim again. Prada had listened to the song before the program was recorded. The beauty of the song was indescribable. But what amazed Prada more was the electronic music arrangement, which subverted her previous understanding of Yang-yi. Yang-yi's previous songs were either played on the guitar or the piano. Chapter 8:18. Although Shishi's nervousness had been relieved a little, when her parents and Ms. Prada stepped aside and left her alone on the stage in front of 200 to 300 audience members, the little girl became nervous again. Papa. Shishi was nervous and thought of her father. She turned her head to look at her father, her small eyes looking a little helpless. In fact, her father was not far away, just a few meters below the stage, but the difference between the center of the spotlight and the outside of the spotlight increased the sense of distance. Come on. Yang-yi gave Shishi a thumbs up to encourage her. At this time, Prada was still the experienced one. She borrowed a baseball cap from a little girl in the audience, adjusted the elastic, and handed it to Shishi. She smiled and said to Shishi, This is a very useful experience. Your hair is longer, so when you wear the cap and dance, it won't be scattered easily. Also, let me see. Oh, what a cool little girl. Shishi smiled shyly at her, and the little girl's mood improved again after being praised. The music finally started. First, there was a rhythmic jazz drum sound, and then there was a very exotic ethnic drum sound mixed in. Then there was a new sound mixed in. However, although there were more and more instruments, the overall melody was not messy, and it maintained a lively rhythm, which made the audience feel like they were swaying with it. If there were people from Yang-yi's previous world present, they would definitely be able to identify the source of this dance music from the prelude alone. Yes, it was the brainwashing dance song Seve, which sang Sabonin Kills the Black Chicken. Today, Shishi was going to perform the shuffle dance with this accompaniment, which was popular all over the world in Yang-yi's previous world. The The reason why this dance was so popular was that it was not too difficult, and it was light and lively. Yang-yi took it out in Murphy's dance studio, and it soon won the favor of Murphy and Shishi. Murphy danced the best, and she soon learned from Yang-yi, and surpassed him. Shishi was not bad either. The little girl liked this dance the most, and she was not tired of dancing every day. Although the little girl did not dance very well in the beginning, after playing for so long, she had become a skilled Seve shuffle dancer. Although Shishi was a little nervous at the beginning, when the music started, the little girl subconsciously put her feet away and got into the mood. Shishi's hands were in front of her body, and her head was slightly lowered. She was as cool as some girls who were dancing, and her body gently twisted with the rhythm of the music. But it was not big, but it was full of rhythm. Wow! Prada, who was standing at the side of the stage, could not help but exclaim at the camera. Of course, Shishi was still a little nervous. When the sound of the fourth instrument mixed in, which was the original version of Sabonin Kills the Black Chicken, the Swahili song appeared. Yang-yi's version did not include these songs. After all, this language was too obscure, and Yang-yi did not know how to play it. The rhythm became lighter and lighter, but the little girl forgot what to do next. Fortunately, her eyes were still looking down the stage. Murphy also noticed that Shishi was facing a problem, so she turned her left hand and right hand to give her some hints at the right time. Shishi's eyes lit up. She remembered. For the next dance, she could rely on her physical instincts, which she had practiced for so long, and she did not need her mother to remind her anymore. However, in the eyes of the audience, this dance was a little strange. Although it was very fresh, they felt that it lacked a little excitement. However, Shishi did not just rely on her arms to dance. Soon, the little girl matched it with a simple shuffle step, and at the same time, waved her arms like before. This dance looked much better. Prada watched from below the stage with a smile. When the camera panned over, she also looked at the camera with interest and waved her arms like Shishi. Although she was not as good looking as Shishi, she always had the feeling that this little dance is very simple. Prada was like Shishi, with her right arm on her waist, and her left index finger extended forward and retracted. She turned it over and extended it forward and retracted it again. Her palm pushed forward and retracted. The audience was probably thinking the same thing. I can do it too. However, this was not the real climax yet. At the front, the audience's attention was focused on Shishi's waving little arms. When the originally complicated instrumental accompaniment suddenly became simple, leaving only the electronic music from Seve that made people want to dance, not only did the rhythm and emotion of the music reach a climax, but the audience's emotions also instantly entered a state of excitement. The little girl in the middle of the stage, who had already entered a state of mind, retracted her waving hands. As if she was running, she clenched her small fists and naturally kept them by her side. Accompanied by the lively dance steps, the little girl actually turned sideways and danced with her side facing the audience and the camera. However, this sideways turn was like a stroke of genius, turning everyone's attention to Shishi's cheerful steps. Oh my God! There were already audience members who could not help but open their mouths. Shishi's smooth and dazzling steps completely attracted them. It was unknown how many people put away their previous contempt at this moment, but it was believed that all the audience members were infected by the music and dance steps at this moment. Their bodies tensed up, and they could not wait to get up and dance as well. The effect of Shishi's three-quarter casual jeans at this moment was reflected. The little girl's slender and long legs gave people the illusion that although she was petite, her legs were as long as an adult's. The little long legs, coupled with the cheerful and dynamic shuffle dance, complemented each other, and also added a lot of charm to each other. Although Shishi was still too young, and this dance was a little less sexy, it was also a little more fresh and cute. Looking at the little girl's serious little face, there was a kind of adorable feeling that made people want to dote on her. I like this little girl. She's too cute. An audience member could not help but say to her friend, I like this dance even more. I want to dance too. Her female companion said excitedly. That is amazing. At this moment, Prada was already shocked by Shishi's dance. Although it was exaggerated, she was not so easily surprised. However, She could still see the magic of this dance from Shishi's performance at this moment. She could not help but say to the camera, "Ladies and gentlemen, I can't wait to tell you that the dance you're watching now has its music seve. I'm afraid that from tomorrow onwards, you'll find it everywhere." There was only half of the dance, and Shishi finished dancing in a little more than a minute. The little girl was slightly out of breath after the dance, but she was in a state of excitement at this moment, and did not feel tired at all. This kind of excitement needed to be shared with others. Therefore, when Prada went on stage, before she could say a few words of praise, the little girl looked at Prada expectantly and said, "Miss Prada, I can teach you how to dance now." The little girl also said very considerately, "Miss Prada, this dance may be a little difficult to learn, but it's okay. I can only teach you the most fun part first." The most fun part? Wasn't it just the shuffling dance at the climax? Prada was embarrassed. She looked at her fat body in front of the camera and coughed twice. She gestured with her arms and said, "Can we only learn this part?" Chapter 819. After recording Prada's talk show, Yang Yi and the rest were counting down to their vacation in the United States. After all, Shishi was about to go to primary school. She had to sign up, pay report, etc. There were many chores that Yang Yi and Murphy had to prepare in advance for the little girl. However, at the end of August, before they returned to China, the episode of Prada's talk show that they recorded was quickly broadcast on TV. In a private house in California, Jermaine Lee, who had passed the excitement of receiving the prize money for undercover tracking, was packing up his fishing gear in the tool house. He was preparing to go fishing with his old friends over the weekend. Jermaine. Suddenly, his wife Linda, who was watching TV with the children in the living room, suddenly shouted, "What's wrong?" Jermaine thought that something had happened to his pregnant wife, so he rushed over. Linda smiled and pointed at the TV saying, "Jermaine, weren't they the ones who helped you and Hill last time?" The TV was playing Prada's talk show, and the guests sitting on the sofa. Linda did not recognize them at first. Foreigners had face blindness when it came to Asians, even though Linda had seen photos. However, when she heard their names, Linda reacted. Jermaine looked at the TV and said in surprise, "That's right, it's them. They're actually celebrities?" Jermaine couldn't help but sit down and watch it with his wife. When he saw Mo Fei singing and heard Mo Fei's emotional voice, Jermaine couldn't believe his ears. "It's so good," Linda exclaimed. Jermaine said emotionally, "When Yang told me that his wife was a professional singer, I did not believe it. I felt that if Yang was a professional singer, it would be easier to believe. However, as for his wife, I have never heard her sing before. But she's really good. Look at Prada's evaluation," Linda said. Someone from the production team of Undercover Tracking also watched the episode of Undercover Tracking. Coincidentally, that person was an assistant director of the production team. He also happened to have a deep impression of the amazing Chinese that Jermaine and the rest met. The next day, he hurriedly took the recording of the Prada talk show and ran to their TV station to find the executive director. "Tim, we're so lucky. We actually met a big star who didn't need to pay an appearance fee during the recording of the show. You have to give him more scenes in that episode, and also the part where he sings. You don't know how incredible this family's performance on the Prada show was." There was no need for these directors to guess. In the American entertainment newspapers that had already been published, many media outlets had reported on Yang Yi and his family. They were not those fancy gossip media outlets. There were many real experts among them. They could tell that Yang Yi's diamonds was extraordinary, and they could also tell that Murphy's performance of the song was wonderful. Therefore, the media scrambled to report on the singer, the song, and the man behind it. China's 50 million selling singer performs Prada talk show Diamonds Shine. She outshines diamonds tonight. China's Helena, her song will conquer your ears. Helena was a popular American singer in this world. Her singing was also quite good. He's the creator of Prison Break, and also the creator and singer of I'm Yours. Today his new song was perfectly performed by his wife. A genius from China, writing books, scriptwriting, songwriting, singing. What doesn't he know? Although the focus was different, It had to be said that the overwhelming media coverage still attracted the attention of many curious Americans and interested musicians. Soon, the number of views for the new episode of Prada Talk Show that was officially uploaded to the video website skyrocketed. It quickly left the other videos behind. After all, Prada Talk Show was originally a daytime program. Most of the audience were housewives like Linda, who had little interest in the internet. Who knew that this episode would become different? It was more popular among young people who liked to surf the internet. They watched it on demand and also shared it on social media sites. The video clip of Murphy's singing was cut and received more attention. Wilson, who was ready, released the audio source of Yang E and Murphy's English song. Not only did the sales of Diamonds hit the top 50 of the Billboard chart in just a few days, but Yang E and Murphy's other songs, I'm Yours, Let It Go and so on, also received a lot of attention. The sales also squeezed into the top 100 after a week. This was especially true for I'm Yours. Originally, many young people had been searching for this song. Now it finally appeared on a convenient download channel. Although it lacked some promotion, this song's reputation was much higher than that of Diamonds. It was especially sought after by young people who liked romance. Therefore, its potential to climb up the charts in the future was very promising. But no one expected that when this episode of Prada Talk Show was released on the internet, the most popular part was not Yang E and Murphy's performance, but Shishi's last dance. Even the commentary clip of the enthusiastic young lady teaching Prada how to dance was clicked and played by many fans. Shishi's dance was really beautiful. The young lady suddenly became popular, even more popular than her parents. Even the video clip on the video website was crowned with the gimmick of the most dancing little girl in history. Of course, this was just a gimmick. Although Shishi's dance was beautiful, she was not a professional dancer after all. She had not danced since elementary school. Compared to those young dancers who were truly talented and had received professional training, she was far from it. However, this did not stop people from liking Shishi and the dance. The rhythm was brisk, the movements were simple, and the dance was lively. It could also show off a girl's perfect figure. Coupled with the brainwashing dance song Seve, how could such a dance not become popular? Even though it was still lacking, the sharp-eyed Mao Peifu seized the opportunity and started a Facebook campaign to record a video of her dancing to Seve. Yang Yi's account that posted the music was, of course, available for purchase and download. Hence, many people started practicing according to Shishi's video. Some people recorded videos that were not very good at dancing, but among them, there were also videos of hot beauties dancing very well. These videos also received a lot of views. They were the key to Seve's popularity. More and more people participated in this campaign. It was not only the beauties from the United States, but also from other countries. Even the girls from China participated. Of course, the men who liked to dance were not to be outdone. More and more people registered and used Facebook. People were keen to upload their videos to video websites and were more willing to share it with their friends on social media to gain their praise. In less than a month, Seve had become a global topic. People were obsessed with this brisk dance. Of course, the person who started it, Yang E, and the founder of the Seve Shuffle dance, Shishi, had also become the top internet celebrities known by the world. Of course, at that time, Shishi had already left the United States and had even started her elementary school career. Chapter 820. Shishi did not know that she had become famous in America. She, who was returning to the country with her father and mother, was still immersed in the sadness of parting with her grandfather and grandmother, as well as her best friends, Xiaobai and Huahua. When they were waiting at the airport after transferring from Xianyo City to San Francisco, the little girl was no longer interested in running around to admire the VIP lounge. She snuggled up to her father obediently, her long eyelashes still glistening with tears. "Papa, when Huahua grows up, it will go back to the forest to look for its mom, right?" Shishi asked pitifully as she looked at her father. These were questions she had asked countless times before she left. However, when she really could not see them, Shishi could not help but worry about the delicate and pitiful deer. Yang Yi patted her head gently and said with a smile, "That's right. When Huahua grows up a little more, Grandpa will bring it to familiarize itself with life in the forest with Grandpa Lister and Grandpa Beria. Then it will go back to its mother. Then we won't be able to see Huahua when we come to Grandpa's house next year, right?" Although Shishi was happy that Huahua could return to the forest, a strong sense of reluctance rose in her heart. Huahua is different from Xiaobai. It belongs to the forest. Although we won't be able to see Huahua in the future, we know that it's doing well. Isn't that enough? Yang Yi replied patiently. He would never be able to give Cici a satisfactory answer to these questions. The only thing Yang Yi could do was accompany his daughter to walk out of this sad mood. Time would always heal everything. When Yang Yi and his family were about to board the plane to return to the country, the first episode of China's Voice, which had been prepared for months, was finally broadcast on the capital television station. Meng Fanxing did not go back on his words. China's Voice was scheduled to be broadcasted at 8 p.m. on Friday during the prime time slot. The overwhelming publicity that Meng Fanxing had previously arranged was effective as well. Many people who were enjoying the upcoming weekend were already waiting in front of their televisions in anticipation. Song Ji, the die-hard fan who had previously taught many people how to surmount obstacles to watch Yang Yi's videos on overseas video websites, was also a music fan. With such a grand music variety show like China's Voice being broadcasted, she naturally would not miss it. It was only 7:50 a.m. when Song Ji rushed out of her room and shouted, "Mom, change the channel quickly. I want to watch Chun Yijia on Beijing TV." "What are you looking at, Chun Yijia?" "I'm watching a TV show," Mama Song said angrily. On the side, Papa Song raised his eyelids. He didn't want to get involved in the women's war over the remote control. In the end, Song Ji managed to snatch the remote control. Taking advantage of the commercial break, she switched to Beijing television station and said with a smile, "Mom, why don't you watch it first? Who knows, you might like it too." "You hurry up and go to school. School is about to start and you're still at home," Mama Song grumbled. Coincidentally, after a short commercial break, China's Voice started broadcasting. The program flow was similar to Yang Yi's previous life. The opening was a logo animation of China's Voice holding a microphone and raising 2 fingers. Following that, 4 red chairs lit up. The 4 coaches appeared one after another and gave a simple explanation of the format of China's Voice. As a good singer, the most fundamental thing is your voice. Mama Song looked at the person who spoke and couldn't help but exclaim, isn't this that so and so?" Papa Song was also interested, Lin Qitian. He was very popular in the 80s and 90s when he sang. "But I haven't seen him for a long time. Why is he on this show?" Song Ji said proudly, "Because the program team invited him to be a coach. He's the same as Chen Yijie and the other 2. They're all very experienced musicians." Lin Qitian is also a professor at the Central Academy of Music. TSK, this show has invited all capable people, Papa Song said with interest. "Why are their chairs facing away from the others?" Mama Song couldn't help but feel strange when she saw the TV cut to the scene of the coaches sitting down and turning their chairs around. This is because when they choose the contestants, they will only listen to the contestants' voices and choose the contestants based on the quality of their voices. This is called a blind selection. Songji explained excitedly. She had been paying attention to relevant news and had seen the leaked spy photos. "Mom, let me tell you. In the past, the news said that the show would cover the contestants with a cloth so that the coaches couldn't see their faces. Now the program team has slapped them in the face. Hee, I think this format is very interesting." It was indeed interesting. Mama Song's interest was piqued. She forgot that the commercial break was over and her TV series had already started broadcasting. Now, she was looking forward to the first contestant's appearance. Of course, China Star Productions didn't disappoint them. China's Voice didn't drag at all, and quickly cut to the main topic. The first contestant's appearance. So fast. Songji couldn't help but exclaim. There wasn't any foreshadowing at the beginning. Indeed, there wasn't. This world's China's Voice didn't even have a VCR to introduce the contestants at the beginning. The first contestant was a very short female contestant. Under the encouragement of the host backstage, she pushed open the door and walked out onto the brightly lit stage. "She's so short, how can she be a singer?" Mama Song said in a picky tone. "Mom, it doesn't matter if you're tall or short. As long as you have a musical dream and a good voice, you can go on this stage. This stage is meant to give those who don't have the chance to show their talents elsewhere a chance to realize their dreams," Songji said. Of course, they were only expressing their opinions. Soon after, the short female contestant used her explosive voice to impress many of the audience members, including Mama Song, who didn't approve of her. "This girl's lung capacity is amazing," Papa Song couldn't help but exclaim. Of course, the most exciting moment was when she sang at the top of her lungs. Lin Qitian took the initiative to press the button on the table and turned his chair around to face the contestant. The director even arranged for a close-up of the chair. On the chair that was turned around, the words, "I choose you," were lit up. Seeing this, the short girl who was singing on stage had an excited expression on her face. Her eyes even started to sparkle with tears. The audience sitting in front of their televisions couldn't help but feel happy for her. It wasn't easy. After crossing so many obstacles, she could finally continue to walk on this stage. It was worth mentioning that this world's China's voice didn't have too many gimmicks. There was also no opportunity for the contestants to tell their stories after the competition. The intermediate segment was just a selection of contestants and comments by the coaches. Even the contestants who didn't make it were not without benefits. The 4 coaches gave them pointers one after another. Lin Qitian, Chen Yijie, and the other capable coaches gave them valuable suggestions. These were all stipulated in the coaches' contracts. The program team spent a lot of money to invite the coaches to give them lessons, so naturally, it wasn't just a formality. The program team also provided a very good opportunity for the contestants who contributed their voices to the program to improve themselves. Of course, how much they could learn and how much they could improve depended on their personal development. But in the eyes of Songji and many of the audience and music lovers in front of their televisions, this was a treatment that made them go crazy with envy. Even if they lost, it wouldn't be a loss. Chapter 821. Xixi did not change much after returning to China from America. She rested at home for a day to adjust to the jet lag. Then, she ran to Lan Xian's villa energetically to play with Lan Xian. She also shared the photos and stories she brought back from America with her. Tong Tong had changed a lot. He had lived abroad for 2 months. Not only did he learn how to call his parents, but he also learned how to sit and crawl on his own. He seemed to have forgotten the environment he lived in 2 months ago. After returning from his grandfather's huge house, Tong Tong was confused about the new environment. When Yang Yi was talking to Murphy, Murphy was overjoyed and told him, "You don't know." When he woke up, he looked around like a fool. He seemed to be asking, "Why did my house suddenly become smaller? Why aren't there any animals outside my house? Why is it so quiet all of a sudden?" Of course, Murphy was joking. Tong Tong was really curious about this new environment. Tong Tong could crawl on his own now. This was equivalent to an adventurer who loved to explore the unknown, obtaining a means of transportation. Tong Tong could not wait to start his adventure when his mother was not paying attention. On the afternoon of the 3rd day, Yang Yi went out. Xixi also went to Lan Xian's place. Only Murphy accompanied Tong Tong to play on the carpet in the living room. It just so happened that Luo Xian called her. Mo Fei's mobile phone was placed upstairs. She glanced at the door and window, patted Xiao Ran's little butt and said with a smile, "Ran, you have to play downstairs, okay? Mommy is going upstairs to get my phone. I'll be back soon." Tong Tong did not understand what his mother said. He crawled over and sat down. He picked up a big plastic soldier toy and opened his mouth. He was about to use his few baby teeth to gnaw on the poor plastic soldier's head. "No, Hua Hua. You can't gnaw on the toy." Murphy raised her voice and shouted before she went upstairs. Although little Fuchin couldn't understand his mother's words, he knew that his mother was calling him and that he couldn't do anything. Coupled with his mother's stern tone, The little guy still put down his toy in grievance. That's good. Go play downstairs. Mommy will be down soon. Murphy went upstairs. She unplugged her charging phone and called Luo Xian back. Luo Xian called because she saw the video and news report of Mo Fei's performance on the American talk show on the internet. The news reports in China were lagging behind, but they were still proud of Murphy's achievements and influence overseas. The Voice has become the hottest topic recently, but Murphy's voice has become an international hit. Murphy sings on US TV and conquers US audience with her singing, Diamonds shines on the charts overseas. Murphy has become a big star overseas. It was similar to the news reports in China after Yang Yi became popular. People like to promote this special feeling. It was as if a local celebrity had become a national hero after performing overseas. Luo Xian complained sourly that Murphy did not sing such a good song on her show. She also complained that she did not bring Shishi on her show and let Shishi go on an overseas show. Tell me the truth. Are you going overseas to develop your career? Luo Xian wanted to invite Murphy and her family to appear on Jishin interview again. However, Murphy had appeared on her show too many times. The last time was in April. It had not even been half a year. If she invited them again, the audience would be disgusted. Luo Xian did not make this request. She only called to tease Murphy because she saw her as a good sister. Why would I? I haven't developed my career in China yet. Why would I go overseas? Murphy laughed with Luo Xian as she unplugged her phone charger and prepared to go downstairs to call her son. She had to keep an eye on Tong Tong. Otherwise, she would not feel at ease. However, Murphy did not know that after she went upstairs, Tong Tong turned his head and blinked his big black eyes. He stared at his mother's back in a daze. No one knew what he was thinking about, or perhaps he had made a decision. The little guy grinned, and his little dimples appeared. He smiled happily and leaned over, using his two chubby little arms to support himself, and climbed up from the ground. Perhaps it was because he was well nourished and had not been sick since he was young. Tong Tong had developed very well. His two little arms were very strong and supported him as he climbed to the edge of the carpet in the living room. The floor was cold, but it was the end of summer and the beginning of autumn. It was much more comfortable than the warm carpet. Tong Tong lifted his little head as if to confirm the direction. He then continued to climb forward with his little butt sticking out. This house was so unfamiliar. Tong Tong wanted to look around. Murphy held the charger in her arms as she walked downstairs with her phone in her hand. She did not notice that Tong Tong was nimbly climbing through the side hall when she turned around. Mom's voice. Tong Tong turned a deaf ear to it. He was interested in the cats that Yang Yi had brought home yesterday. Tong Tong was more interested in the furry cats than the yellow dog, Steamed Bun, who was wagging his tail. Steamed Bun came over and sniffed Tong Tong's little hand. However, Tong Tong leaned back a little and raised his fair and smooth right hand. He pressed his little hand against Steamed Bun's nose and pushed him. Woo-woo. Steamed Bun lay down on the side with his head on his forelegs and looked at his little master pitifully. He had been so excited to go home from Lan Xian's place. In the end, other than the happy return yesterday, it was once again ignored today. Shishi went to play with Lan Xian, and Tong Tong did not want to play with him. Steamed Bun began to doubt his dog life. Tong Tong ignored Steamed Bun. He was excitedly looking up at the three cats lying on the cat tree. The little guy had returned to his sitting position and was happily scratching the air with his two little hands, as if he was calling for Xiao Guai and the others to come down. Perhaps Tong Tong had some special magic, but Xiao Guai jumped down from the cat tree. His round bluish-black tail was like a snake. He stood up and slightly curled up behind him. He went into Tong Tong's arms. Hee. Tong Tong was so happy that he gave Xiao Guai a big hug. As he hugged Xiao Guai, Tong Tong's little dimples seemed to ripple happily. It felt good to hug Xiao Guai. Xiao Guai's fur was as soft and smooth as the finest satin. He was also chubby just like Tong Tong. It was very comfortable to hug him. Xiao Guai did not struggle. He just patted Tong Tong's arm with his tail and looked at the disappointed Steamed Bun with his round eyes. When Xiao Guai's three-petaled mouth was slightly raised, It looked like a doge smile. Steamed Bun looked at Xiao Guai's smug face and lowered his head again, as if he had been hurt 10,000 times. Chapter 822. Tong Guai did not notice. Tong Tong, who was hugging him, grinned for a while before he fixed his big eyes on Tong Guai's nimble tail. Tong Guai's head moved along with his tail, and saliva gathered in his slightly opened mouth. His growing gums were itching again. Just as Tong Tong reached out to grab Tong Guai's tail, Tong Guai's mother's anxious voice came from the living room. "Mommy, Mommy, where did you go?" Fortunately, Tong Tong was distracted by Tong Guai and did not crawl far away. Murphy, who had hurried over, quickly found her son, who was about to bite Tong Guai's tail, in the side hall. Xiao Guai was still oblivious. Although its tail was a little uncomfortable being grabbed by little Siamese, it was very tolerant of little Siamese today. Its pancake-like cat face moved from the aggrieved Bun to the big master. Murphy, who was still in shock, picked up Tong Tong from the ground. Tong Tong, who had no strength to resist, had no choice but to let go of Tong Guai. Murphy kissed Tong Tong's cheek and scolded him. "Why are you crawling everywhere? You almost scared Mom to death." However, Tong Tong was not satisfied yet. He stretched his neck and tried to squeeze out of his mother's arms. He stretched out his small hands and caught as he reached for Tong Guai. "I haven't played enough yet." Murphy heaved a sigh of relief. She smiled and gently tapped Tong Tong's nose. She said affectionately, "You are so naughty." "She's so naughty even though she hasn't grown up yet. What should I do?" Murphy was still happy to let Tong Tong crawl, while she exercised her body coordination through playing. However, Murphy had to consider a problem. How could she prevent Tong Tong from crawling away when she was distracted? Bingo! Murphy had an idea. Half an hour later, Yang Yi's living room changed drastically. Tong Tong was sitting in the middle of the carpet in a daze. He looked around and saw a large area where he could move freely. However, the area outside the area was surrounded like a castle. There was no escape route for him. Murphy spent a lot of effort to build the castle. She used pillows, winter quilts from the cabinet, and even some large dolls of Shishi. Together with the sofa, the castle surrounded a large area in front of the TV. In addition, Murphy moved the coffee table in front of the sofa to give Tong Tong more room to move. The soft walls, the small room, seemed to be surrounded by quilts, pillows, and other things. After the project was completed, Murphy clapped her hands and looked around with satisfaction. Then she said to Tong Tong proudly, "Mommy, you can climb as you wish now. Mom doesn't have to worry about you getting lost." Tong Tong looked around in confusion. However, he was not content to just sit there. He still climbed to the edge of the castle in high spirits. Murphy sat on the sofa and smiled as she watched her son hit a wall. On the road of exploration, Xiao Tiao encountered a tall mountain made of pillows and quilts, but Xiao Tiao did not give up. For freedom and exploration, Xiao Tiao bravely launched an attack on the mountain. Tong Tong raised his left hand and pressed it on the quilt. Then he pressed his other hand on it. Are you trying to crawl over?" Mo Fei was a little surprised. However, Mo Fei did not intend to stop him. Instead, she picked up her phone with interest and recorded it for her son. Regardless of whether he succeeded or failed, Murphy felt that it was very interesting. She wanted to record it for Yang Yi. Tong Tong moved step by step, pressing on the quilt and pillows. He lifted his body little by little and finally stood up shakily. "Oh my God, did you see that?" He almost stood up. Murphy was surprised and exclaimed softly behind the camera. Murphy had been taking care of Lil Fawn for the longest time, but this was the first time she had seen Lil Fawn stand upright with the help of something else. Usually, Lil Fawn had to be supported by his parents before he could stand up limply. Of course, little Fuching also liked to walk. Every time his parents helped him up, he would excitedly giggle and rush forward with big strides. Even though he was still too young, and the 9-month-old little Momo's legs were still soft, and he didn't have the strength to support himself, he still had the courage to move forward. Murphy did not expect to see Tong Tong's amazing growth today. He was supporting himself on other things to stand up. Tong Tong did not know that he had made great progress in human history. He was still trying his best to deal with the mountain in front of him. Even if he stood up, he would not be able to go over. What should he do? The little boy was very tenacious. He stood there and pondered for a while. He seemed to be holding back his strength. Finally, Murphy saw him trying to lift one of his legs while hugging a pillow. He flipped over as if he was turning over. Of course, a miracle did not happen. Tong Tong's right leg went soft, and he sat down on the floor. He lost his balance and fell on his back. Mo Fei was very happy to see this, but little Momo was scared by what she did. The originally happy little dimples were gone, replaced by a small mouth that was pursed with lingering fear. Her big eyes began to fill with tears, and she was ready to burst out crying at any time. Tong Tong did not feel any pain from the fall. The carpet was very soft, and Tong Tong did not fall hard. He was just shocked by the sudden fall. Oh, don't cry. Mom, come and take a look. Murphy saw the situation and hurriedly went over to hug the little boy. Tong Tong did not cry for long. After a while, he got down from his mother's arms and climbed to the edge of the castle with interest. Murphy happily turned on the TV. She watched the TV while looking after the little boy. The television was currently broadcasting the trailer for the first season of Shanghai TV stations, the Limit Challenge concert. Although this season's program had ended last week, the last episode of this special program would normally only show Dan Hongkue and the others competing for the songwriters, learning from the songwriters, and asking for a song, as well as some clips before and after the concert. The program team was very bad and left some suspense. They had already colluded with Shanghai TV station, so the full version of the concert would only be broadcasted tonight. Murphy watched the TV for a while, but she did not know why she felt uncomfortable sitting on the sofa. She looked left and right, and an idea came to her mind. She got down from the sofa and sat in the castle beside Tong Tong. This is so comfortable. I feel so safe. After a while, she brought Lon Xian home to play. The two girls wore slippers and ran in. Their cheerful laughter could be heard from afar. Auntie Mo, my dad said that I can have dinner at Shishi's house tonight. Lon Xian reported to Murphy as soon as she entered the house. Murphy did not have to guess. Lance Hao Kai definitely did not ask Yang Yi and directly threw his daughter over to eat and drink. She smiled and said, "That's great. I'll call your Uncle Yang later and ask him to cook a few more delicious dishes tonight." Hee. Thank you, Auntie Mo. After Lon Xian finished speaking, she excitedly hugged Shishi and shouted, "I can have dinner at your house tonight." Cece, on the other hand, saw the fortress made by her mother. Her gaze fell on those large dolls. The little girl couldn't help but pout her little mouth and say, "Mama, why is my big bear here? Did Steamed Bun dig it out?" Steamed Bun was happily wagging his tail behind her. When he heard the little master call his name, he raised his head and looked over with his big, innocent eyes. How could it be made by Steamed Bun? Mama moved them down. Look at this, Mama surrounded them, so that your little brother can play in them and won't climb to other places. Mo Fei smiled and said. Tong Tong also saw his sister. He happily held out the plastic soldier in his hand. It was not clear whether he wanted to invite his sister to play or give his favorite toy to her. This was all because his sister treated him very well. Tong Tong loved to play with his sister. When Shishi heard that the plushies were for her little brother to play with, the little girl stopped pouting and said briskly, "Okay then. I can give them to my little brother to play with." Chapter 823. The full version of Extreme Selectivity's charity concert was broadcast at the end of the summer break. Although the most discussed variety show in daily life and on Weibo had shifted from Extreme Selectivity to China's The Voice, with people praising the new show's novelty and brilliance, and lamenting the quality of its live concert sound effects, there were still quite a number of die-hard fans who were looking forward to the full version of the concert broadcast. Jiang Yujie, who lived in Min Province, had been waiting for this day for a week. There were 6 contestants in the Limit Challenge. Jiang Yujie liked Yang Huan, who was straightforward, pretty, and good at martial arts. It was said that Yang Huan, who was not good at singing, would work hard to sing. Jiang Yujie was looking forward to her performance. Jiang Yujie hoped that Yang Huan could give her fans a different surprise. Of course, in his heart, he still wanted to see Yang Huan make a fool of herself. However, after watching the last episode, Jiang Yujie changed his mind. He moved Yang Huan's performance back and left the spot of his most anticipated performance to Dan Hongkue and Yang Yi's collaboration. It was said that it would be a Hokkien song. Jiang Yujie, who spoke Hokkien, would naturally support this performance. At 10 p.m., the final episode of the Limit Challenge's first season was broadcast. Jiang Yujie watched it with great interest. Yang Huan's performance was ranked second. What made Jiang Yujie happy and a little regretful was that Yang Huan's performance wasn't bad. Although she couldn't sing well and didn't know how to play musical instruments, under the ingenious arrangement of her partner, Yang Huan sang the simpler parts. What Jiang Yujie didn't know was that Yang Huan had put in a lot of effort in June for these few lines of the song. Under Ji Ningming's guidance, she had practiced for a long time in the recording studio. Although Yang Huan's singing was average in the eyes of professional singers, her performance was enough to surprise the audience, such as Jiang Yujie. More importantly, Jiang Yujie also saw Yang Huan's wonderful fan dance, which was choreographed by an expert, not Yang Yi. It was a performance that was mixed with dance moves and martial arts, which made up for Yang Huan's lack of singing. Wonderful. After watching it, Jiang Yujie could not help but applaud Yang Huan at home. Every program was very exciting, with songs and dances. It was beyond Jiang Yujie's expectations. In the previous episode, Jiang Yujie had thought that the charity concert would be a concert from the beginning to the end. However, the program team's arrangement still gave the audience too many surprises. Whether it was the original songs or the old songs that were mixed in with the new songs, they all reflected everyone's efforts. Including the beauty of the stage and the lighting, it was not inferior to a professional gala. The only regret is that the show is scheduled to air on Wednesday at 10 p.m. During the commercial break, Jiang Yujie couldn't help but complain in his heart. By the time Dan Hongkue and Yang Yi appeared, it would probably be 12 o'clock. Because the order of appearance in the previous episode had been decided, Dan Hongkue's performance was the last. However, the good news is that the next season has been confirmed to air on Saturday at 8 p.m. That's a great time slot. You can't miss it. Jiang Yujie's mood fluctuated between good and bad. It's just that we'll have to wait until next year for the next season. How annoying. Luckily, there's still China's Voice to watch. Yang Yi should do more variety shows. 2 aren't enough, the more the merrier. Time flew by quickly amidst the exciting performances and Jiang Yujie's wild thoughts. Gradually, the concert came to an end, and Dan Hongkue and Yang Yi finally appeared on stage. The beginning was like an opera, but also like the prelude to a lion dance. It made Jiang Yujie's dizzy head immediately sober. And then Love to work hard to win. The melody of this song is so old. Jiang Yujie thought with emotion. He was a nostalgic person. Since he was young, he had been influenced by the Nanyang melodies that were spread all over the streets. Now that he heard it again, he liked it even more. The TV cameras also cut to the guests who were accompanied by the selected members. This was the first time they had heard Yang Yi's song. Like Jiang Yujie, they were all mesmerized by the melody of the song. They even held each other's hands and started twisting, as if they were dancing on the beach. A momentary lapse in judgment cannot be forgiven. Yang Yi took the lead and raised the microphone to sing the first line. Wait a minute, chicken eat feces door bowl bomb? What was he singing? Many of the audience were confused, but the audience in front of the TV was much better. Although most of the audience were confused, they could read the subtitles. They could pretend that they understood the song, just like those people who thought they understood the English dialogue of the American movies by reading the subtitles. Jiang Yujie was different. As he could speak Hokkien, he could really understand it. Not bad. His singing is quite accurate. Jiang Yujie remembered that Yang Yi was from Anqing. He also remembered that Yang Yi had said in the previous episode that he learned Hokkien because his wife Murphy's ancestors were Taiwanese. Now it seemed that Yang Yi's language skills were indeed heaven-defying. Not only did he speak English well, but he also spoke Hokkien very well. Following that, it was Dan Hongkue's turn to sing the next 3 lines. A momentary lapse in judgment cannot be forgiven, no hope lost, every day drunk. It was obvious who was better. Dan Hongkue's singing of Hokkien was full of mistakes in Jiang Yuje's ears. Of course, to those who did not understand Hokkien, Dan Hongkue's singing was still pretty good. After all, to be able to sing a song in a language that they did not understand accurately, or close to the basic pronunciation after more than half a month of practice was still praiseworthy. A soulless body like a scarecrow. It was Yang Yi's turn to sing again. Jiang Yuje, who was more picky with his ears, immediately felt more comfortable. This won't do. I can't just focus on whether they're singing correctly or not. Jiang Yuje suddenly came to a realization. He decided to forget about all this, and focused on listening to the song while looking at the subtitles. Life can be compared to the waves on the sea. Sometimes they rise and sometimes they fall. This classic line was sung by Yang Yi. Jiang Yuje felt as if he had drunk a few glasses of wine, and became slightly tipsy. It was too nice to listen to. Yang Yi's singing was exactly the same as Murphy's. Both of them did not have any exaggerated movements, but this made it easier for people to focus on their singing. Listening to the emotional and rhythmic singing, Jiang Yuje felt as if he was immersed in the world described by the song. Good luck, bad luck. Dan Hongkue and Yang Yi looked at each other and sang a line. This scene was quite interesting, but Jiang Yuje still paid more attention to this song. Dan Hongkue's singing is not bad. Although there are some small mistakes in the pronunciation of some words, his voice is very good. No wonder he's known as the best singer among the best actors. Jiang Yuje put aside the language concerns and happily judged. Of course, the audience who did not speak Hokkien did not have such complicated thoughts. They just felt that this song was very nice to listen to. Not only was the melody beautiful, but the lyrics were also very inspirational. Since the concert started, this is the song that fits the theme of extreme challenges the best. Many of the audience members felt this way. 30% is destined by the heavens, 70% is hard work, only those who love to work hard can win. When the song came to an end, Yang Yi and Dan Hongkue sang the most important lyrics for the 3rd time in unison. Many of the audience members could not help but hum along. Yes, even if they did not understand Hokkien, this section was relatively simple and catchy. How could the infected audience not sing along? Jiang Yuje was also full of pride as he sang along for the last time. Although the melody lingered and the ending was not over, he could not help but sigh in his heart. So our Hokkien language can also have such nice songs. There were many nice Hokkien songs, but the most popular one was, "Only those who love to work hard can win." Jiang Yuje also deeply liked this song. He decided to download this song online. He wanted Yang Yi's original version. Previously, Phoebe Studios' official micro-broadcasting had already sent out a message, saying that the source of this song would be released after the program was broadcast. I want to learn this song. When the time comes for the school's singing competition, I want to sing this song in the competition. Jiang Yuje thought happily. You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.